We will call the organizational meeting for calendar year 2015 to order. Hope everybody had a happy New Year and holiday season. It's good to be back. Our first order is the election of chairman, and we will be accepting nominations for chairman for the 2015 year.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Mr. Calvin Taylor as chairman.
We have Mr. Taylor as nominated for chairman. Are there any other nominations?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Mr. Seeley.
Are there any other nominations for chairman? Motion to close the nominations?
So moved.
Does it need to be second?
I don't think that there needs to be a second to close the
Okay.
nominations. I don't think so. We just close, and then we'll just have a vote on the first and or second and see where we go.
Okay.
All right, all in favor of Mr. Taylor being chairman, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Division in the House. Mr. Thomas
The question was,
was for chairman for Mr. Taylor. How did you vote?
I did not vote.
No vote. All right. Mr. Black.
Nay.
Mr. Underwood.
Aye.
Mr. Akers.
Aye.
Mr. Seeley.
Nay.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
And Mr. Thomas did not vote, so
You have to vote.
Don't we vote for either or?
I would think you would have to vote. If you don't vote, then the vote is 3-2 in favor of the motion.
Then don't we vote for Mr. Seeley?
I've never run into this situation. Do you have any answers? Yes, we have a nomination for Calvin Taylor and for Mr. Seeley for chairman. So we have two. So I was starting with the first one I received a nomination for to see how the vote was.
I think he's right.
You asked,
I
right?
think you got to vote both.
That's why I said I didn't vote.
Okay. Okay. Motion. All right. All right. So we will do that. All in favor of Mr. Seeley for being chairman. And we'll just do a roll call, seeing as how it's pretty much division in the House. Mr. Thomas.
Voted aye.
Mr. Black.
Aye.
Mr. Underwood.
Nay.
Mr. Akers.
Nay.
Right fast as y'all can vote. Mr. Seeley.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Nay.
All right, well, that's 3-3. The first one is 3-2. If
Well-
you didn't vote. I mean, it's three affirmative votes for Calvin Taylor. And
I mean, I'm not the chairman. I'm not going to tell you how to run the meeting.
Well, no.
I did what I was supposed to do.
both candidates have received 3 affirmative votes. Well, that's what that's. Are there any further considerations for nominations? That is a tie.
Mr. Chairman, is it, Mr. Go, is it, can we go and have a second round of voting?
Yes.
Or do we have to make the nominations a second
I
time?
would make a motion to nominate someone and vote on that motion.
I make a motion that we nominate Mr. Calvin Taylor.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion for Mr. Taylor to be chairman for this calendar year, signify by saying aye.
I'll break the
Aye.
Division in the House, Mr. Thomas,
I'll break the tie. Aye.
Mr. Black,
Nay.
Mr. Underwood,
Aye.
Mr. Akers,
Aye.
Mr. Seeley,
Nay.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
The motion carries 4-2. And I will gladly pass the gavel of this meeting to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and thank the board for supporting me in this effort. Our next order of business is to elect a vice chairman. So we now will entertain nominations for vice chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Mr. Seeley for vice chair.
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, then we will entertain a motion to
Move
close.
nominations be closed.
Been moved and proper second. Can we get a second?
Second.
Been moved and proper second that the nomination be closed on that name. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Mr. Seeley is vice chairman. All right, our next order of business is the adoption of the rules of order. And I think they are pretty much the same as they have been in the past, unless there are some changes. We could entertain a motion to adopt the rules of order as presented.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second? Been moved and properly second that we adopt the rules of order as presented. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the motion carries. We will now look at the schedule of regular board meetings for 2015. The only change basically is being the November meeting. The first meeting has been moved because of the VACO conference, and that is presented in the list already. So we can entertain a motion to accept the schedule of board meetings for 2015.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Been moved and properly second that we accept the regular board meeting for 2015 as presented. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the motion carries. The next order of business basically talks about the Board of Supervisors appointments and the various boards that we serve on. As chairperson, the only one that I would like to serve on, or that I would ask to serve on, would be the Social Services Board, and that is because there have been some changes over there, and I have served on the board, on the Social Services Board, both as a supervisor and as a member of the board for 8 years. And so I would like to be able to keep the board informed, and I can do that certainly as chairperson. So I would like to serve on that board.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that Calvin Taylor be appointed to the Social Services Board for
Is there a
calendar year
second?
2015.
Second.
Properly seconded, Calvin Taylor will serve as the board member on the Social Services Board. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that Mr. Underwood be appointed to the Rappahannock Area on Aging Board.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second that Mr. Underwood will serve on the Rappahannock Board on Aging. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the motion carries. Okay.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that Mr. Black and Mr. Seeley be reappointed to the George Washington Regional Commission.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that Mr. Black and Mr. Seeley would be reappointed to the Rappahannock Regional Board Commission. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, then the motion carries. Okay, I think that takes care
Mr.
of
Taylor, I'd like to be reappointed to the Fredericksburg Chamber Military Affairs Council.
Okay. All right, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Mr. Seeley would be reappointed to the Military Affairs Council. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries.
You have one more left.
And the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance.
Mr. Chairman, I've served on that for 2 years. If you would like to reappoint me, I'd serve, but if you want someone else, that's fine as well.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, then it's been moved and seconded that Mr. Akins would serve on the Regional Alliance, or go back to the Regional Alliance. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries. That takes care of appointments, and we can now...
How about the
Oh, I'm
Rappahannock
sorry.
Disability Services Board? That's
Oh, I'm
Basin.
sorry.
Water.
I'm sorry. I'm ahead of myself. Okay,
We got this one left. And the Rappahannock Commission.
okay.
Those two.
All right, the Rappahannock Area on Aging, we did that one. That was...
Yeah.
No, you did social services. You did.
No, Underwood.
Yeah,
Mr.
but Mr.
Underwood is-
Mr. Underwood
Oh,
said he
Area on
wanted to
Aging,
serve there.
okay.
So it's the Rappahannock River Basin Commission, I believe, is the only one.
Mr. Chairman, I've served on the past. I enjoy that commission, so if you don't mind, I'll
Second, Mr. Black.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Black would return to the Rappahannock River Basin Commission. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries. Okay, having done that, I think that takes care of all of the appointments, and we can now close the organizational meeting. And I will now call the regular board meeting to order. And since this is the first meeting, I'll do the invitation. If we could just bow our heads, stand if you are able. Our Father in heaven, we come to thee at this hour, thanking thee for all thy blessings, thanking thee for this opportunity to meet and discuss those things that prove to be of interest to the citizens of Caroline. We ask that you would give us wisdom and knowledge and help us to make those decisions that prove to be in our best interest. These and all the blessings we ask in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
If we could turn for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Are there amendments to the agenda?
Just a minute, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. If there are no amendments to the agenda, then the agenda will stand approved as presented. That brings us to opening board comments. Mr. Thomas, do you have any at this time?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do, Mr. Chairman. First of all, the board met, or our 2-on-2 met last week with the school board. Mr. Seeley was unable to be there, but Mr. Cully, Dr. Kelo, Mr. Spalding, and Mrs. Carson met. From that, we expect the school projects to begin in late May. They're going to have their bids out, I think, in March. They are also looking at the teacher salary scale and the number that would be required to fund that. And they, well, of course, with the superintendent leaving and with those projects, I think that was the genesis of the request later for a joint meeting next week. And as last act, I posted a State of the County address on the website. Mr. Cully's actually correcting my grammar on the second version, so that'll be there. Content was my thing, grammar never wasn't. And then last, I would like to see if staff could schedule a community meeting for me at the Visitor Center on the 29th at 7 o'clock. And I don't think that conflicts with the HOA meeting. I think that's the week before, but if it does, let me know. But I think that's what I would like to do. And last is there's a Martin Luther King program at Second Mount Zion in Dawn next Sunday at 4 o'clock. I don't know if the rest of the board got an invitation, but I got one, so I wanted to share it. That's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Black?
Yeah, I just have a few. First of all, I'd like to welcome my dad here. He's all the way from Maine to watch this, so I feel bad for him in some ways, but anyway. Next thing, I just want to make a couple comments. February 7th, inside Lake Landor, the Polar Bear Plunge, which Lake Landor has been hosting over the last couple of years. We'll be back there, and so they're taking donations, and those donations, Wrights Chapel, St. Mary's Catholic Church, those go to Heat Homes and for the food bank in Caroline County. Also on Thursday, February 19th, at 6 and 7:30, I will be having Congressman Whitman. We have to finalize this tentative. Mr. Parton, I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to the church yet, but it's tentative for Thursday, February 19th, 6 o'clock at County Line Baptist, and then 7:30 in the Heritage Clubhouse in Lake Landor. That will be with Congressman Rob Whitman, as well as Delegate Buddy Fowler and myself. Finally, just one other comment, and just kind of, I know staff has been working on it. Have we made any progress yet with Comcast as far as the broadcast? We have made no progress.
Mr. Black, I've been advised by Marie Schuler of Comcast that they are working on that and have asked several times about the status and have not heard anything back yet at this point, other than their technical staff is going to advise us how to proceed from here.
Okay, thank you. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Underwood?
Just two comments, Mr. Chairman. Over the last several weeks, I've had the opportunity to attend several constituent meetings, one in Mr. Thomas's district, one in my district, regarding a presentation by the proposed Caroline Recycling Company that wanted to present some information regarding a possible landfill in the Reedy Church district. We had great turnout, which I think is good, and I think that's the way things should occur, is that we have large turnout. My concern is the level of disrespect that we show visitors into the county, whether we agree or disagree. It was just appalling, and I was very disappointed by many of the citizens to attend. I hope that you understand better the process by which anyone can come into Caroline County and ask to be heard if they want to bring a business in. Then we, the board, listen to the constituents, and we vote accordingly. Sometimes you have all the facts, sometimes you don't. But to be disrespectful of people is just appalling, and I was very disappointed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have Mrs. Hall. I'm going to be in Lake Caroline Monday the 19th at their regular board meeting, but I'm also going to have presentations to people there. But I'd also like to have a meeting in Ladysmith Village, and I usually meet at the library, and also at the firehouse. I don't know whether that's still available. I know they've done some changes at the firehouse, so that may not be available now. So just set it up for Ladysmith Village at the, and we can just invite everybody outside of Lake Caroline to attend that. And I'd like to do that the third week, the fourth week of January, or the first week of February.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Mr. Akers?
No, that's it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Mr. Seeley, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, I have no comments this evening. Thank you.
Okay. All right. The only comment that I would have is that, as chairman, I would like to see if staff could speak with the chairman of the school board. I would like to have an opportunity to sit down with the chairman, and since the superintendent is leaving, I don't know if he would be interested in that, or if there is someone else they would like to bring. I would like Mr. Akers, if he's available, to also come. I just want to try to get a head start, I guess, if you will, on what areas they would like to identify as far as the budget is concerned. Talk about whatever issues that we may be able to talk about to strengthen the relationship. I just believe that education is the key to success, and I think board members up here feel that way. And one of the ways to do that, I believe, is through positive communication, and I would like to get a start in that direction. Thank you. That brings us to...
Mr. Chairman, before we go to that, I have some mail that's addressed to the chairman I'd like to pass to you. It's from Columbia Gas about their new rate request.
Okay. Thank you.
So I know how much we look alike, but I'll be passing you a lot of things.
I bet you will. Thank you. That takes us to the first agenda item, which is the continuing discussion of the VDOT bridge and replacement projects. I see Mr. Nelson is here.
Good evening, Chairman.
Good evening, Mr. Nelson. How are you today?
I'm doing all right.
All right. We had talked at our last meeting, I believe the bridge on 606, as well as the bridge on, is it 721?
722.
I'm 722.
Nelson Hill Road.
And, okay, so I guess I'll just kind of let you want to start first, or do you?
Yeah, I had distributed some information to the county staff regarding the differences between the projects if they were closed or if they were kept open. And I just wanted to kind of give the board an idea of what those differences were. Kind of last time we had talked about Route 606. If the road is closed during construction, the detour length will be 20 miles. The duration for that detour will be 90 days. And the project will actually take 125 days to complete, and at a cost of $2.1 million. If the roadway is held open for the entire project, there will be no detour length. The project will take 270 days and cost approximately $3 million. The Route 722 project, for a full road closure, the detour length is 5 miles. The detour duration will be 75 days, so we'll have a detour in place for 75 days. The project itself will take 125 days and will cost approximately $2.4 million. If we keep the road open, there will be no detour, of course. The project will take 270 days to complete and cost $3.1 million, which is $754,000 more than closing the road down for a 5-mile detour. So both the projects are currently underfunded. The condition of the bridges are deteriorating at a rapid rate. As of right now, the bridges are not posted. Our structures and bridge section has gone out and done a preliminary review of these structures as a part of these projects. They could be potentially posted at 14 tons. At this point in time, they aren't, but in the future, they could be. So any help in savings on any of these projects would help us try to meet that 2015 December add date.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I have it. If we talk about leaving the road open for 606, we're talking another $1 million.
We're talking $863 million, yes.
Okay, all right, and for 722, if we leave it open doing construction,
It's going to cost $754,000 extra.
addition. Board members, Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Nelson, you said in your presentation just now that the projects were not funded?
The projects are currently underfunded, so we're trying to find money to fund these projects.
By underfunded, what do you mean?
As in, to meet our add date with the estimates that we have right now, we don't
I mean, a lot underfunded,
we're talking around the range of,
$300,000
we're talking in the range of $500,000, $600,000.
underfunded.
Yes.
So you can't even do the 2.1 million now?
We can't, we're trying to find additional funds for that.
Okay. And the other thing you said was the add date is December 15.
2015, yes.
So
We're developing these whether or not we have full funds or not to go to construction. We're developing them to meet that date so that we have plans in hand.
we're talking about something that's basically a year off.
Yes.
So when we talk about schools being closed and things like that, you're not going to advertise until December, which means you probably won't start construction until March of 16.
Supposedly, yes, in the springtime.
Okay. And then you also sent us an email and gave us something about the bridge on 721?
Yes, and we can
that you
talk
have to
about,
go- Okay, you're going to do that later?
yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood what the parameters were of the bridge closing, and we're probably just as short on the 722 project?
Well, there's a shortage. The way we're planning to do this project, we're going to bundle both of these projects together at one time, have one contractor mobilized to do both of them. So any savings we can get on keeping one open versus closing both of them will help us try to accelerate this more. And once we pin down what our final delta cost is, we're going to go to try to find that money to get this done advertised by December 2015.
Okay. And the last question is, there's no county funding involved in this, it's all state funding?
All state funds.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
Mr. Black?
Just had a quick question on that. As far as the funding, when would we know, as far as the funding is concerned, when it would be come in?
We would hopefully try to have a good idea sometime by spring of the year as far as we're going to find out with funding. After the 6-year plan is done, we'd more than likely know.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Underwood?
Mr. Nelson, I heard you mention that you're going to talk about the 721 bridge later. Would that be bundled in as well, or would that just be a separate?
That's going to be a separate issue.
Separate total issue altogether?
Mhm.
So I guess what I'm hearing you say is that we need to think about whether we want 90 days of detours for folks, it looks like you said, a 20-mile detour on 606 for 125 days, or we want to use the bridge during construction for 270 days with detour lanes. Is that what you're saying?
What would happen is for that stage construction, we'd have it down to one lane and we would control it with the signal.
Correct.
So you would have access on that road going
Correct.
through the entire time.
But again, that's a 270-day project,
Mhm.
which is, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No more questions.
Mr. Akers?
Mr. Nelson, Mr. Thomas was asking about the funding, and you indicated that you were trying to find roughly $500,000, $600,000 to meet the 2.1. So it's roughly a $900,000 gap there
It's quite,
that you've got to find. So you've got to find $1.4, $1.5 million to make it a viable project.
the actual, well, it's not, we know both of them are a viable project. The thing is, we're
Or
trying
a
to.
go project. I
Yeah,
should say.
we're trying to find additional funds now throughout our bridge maintenance program to compensate for these projects. And like I said, anything that we can do to reduce the cost on this, we're not asking for both of them to be open. If we can just have one to be closed for the duration, it's going to help us. And I talked to my bridge engineer staff before this meeting, and they indicated that we are fully pressing to try to get this done to advertising by December 2015, because if we leave it there any longer, we'll end up posting the bridge and it could go out of service on its own.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Mr. Seeley?
My only question is if we didn't detour one, is that going to be enough? If we didn't detour, if we closed 722, would that delta funding from that be enough to cover both costs?
It won't be enough to cover both of it, but it'll be a whole lot easier for us to find the additional funds instead of both.
And it won't have any, how much effect does this have on the 721 bridge? I know we're
Zero.
not there. Okay,
Zero.
thank you.
Okay, so I guess my question is, when do you need a definitive answer from the board? And I say that because my concern really is whether or not we would be able to leave 606 open and, deal with the traffic signal.
Well, based on past history, and I think we as the department are aware that closing 606, a major thoroughfare, is a major ordeal.
Right.
And we agree with the last time we closed at CSX for the rail crossing for a detour for them to do that, it was a big ordeal.
Right.
We get that.
Okay.
But 722 detour's plan is a 5-mile detour on a loop road.
Okay. So what is it especially that you need from us now?
I would just like to hear potentially the board to say yay or nay to agreeing with closing 722 or 606. And from that point, we'll go forward with developing the projects in that manner.
Okay. All right, and then I will say, how does the board wish to deal with that situation. I'll start up this end. Oh, well,
However you want to do it.
Mr. Sealy?
Mr. Taylor, it's your district, and in the discussions, I've heard you say that 722 is probably, and I have to agree, having lived down at that end of the county before, that detour in 722 makes a lot of sense, and not closing 606. I think with the delta in the funding, that's probably what's going to have to be done.
From the board, does the rest of the board basically see that? I certainly don't want 606 closed. That would just be traumatic. So having heard,
I mean, are you asking for more opinions?
not at this point.
Okay. Because, well, go ahead.
Okay. All right, at this rate then, I would say that we need to go ahead with the closing of 722.
Well, I'm going to be against that, though, Mr. Chairman. That's why I asked if you were going to say more opinions, because we're basically saying it's all state money.
Well,
It's the state's job to take care of the roads, and we're going to inconvenience all of our citizens no matter what we do, and we've just put in a lot of input into the Milford Industrial Park, which is going to be right there with trucks and commerce. So we're not really making a choice of just our citizens, but we're making a choice of our commerce and our business. You know, we have a lot of impact there with running gas there. So let the state do what the state's supposed to do.
I will just add to that I kind of agree with you, but if the condition of the bridge and we don't get a replacement, the bridge could be posted at less than legal limit, which would also impact the industrial area also.
Let the state do what the state's supposed to do.
and I guess my concern is either the funds are there or they're not. If the funds are not there to do that, you know, I can sit here and say, let's do that, but if there is no funds to do it and the project is held up, then we're still suffering from that. The bridge becomes unsafe, and then we're getting into safety concerns. I have no problem with letting the state do what the state says do, but there's only so much money, and if you say to me that the funds are not there, I would rather see one road closed and the other one open, and we go on with the project, eliminating the safety concerns by going on dealing with the project as soon as possible. That's my concern along those lines.
Okay.
So, having said that, you know, I would think that our best bet would be to close 722. Yes.
Can we just call for a vote?
Okay. All right.
Proposal one is that we close,
Okay. Proposal one is that we leave open 606 and we close 722. All right.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Who
Okay.
made the motion? Who made the motion?
I make that motion.
Okay. It's been moved
And I'll
by
second it.
Mr. Akers and second by Mr. Black that we go with the first projection, which is to leave 606 open and close 722. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay?
The motion carries 4-1. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just one question for Mr. Nelson. But that doesn't stop you from continuing to look for the money
No.
to keep,
We're always looking.
I mean, okay, I just want to make sure that it's not an out for you.
No, it's not an out.
That you still continue to
This
make
is
sure.
something to help us close that gap a little bit closer as far as how much funds we have to look for.
Right. Because we're willing to work with you, and we understand the safety issue. If you close the bridge, certainly, so we've already voted, but I just want to make sure that you
Yeah.
continue to look
Oh,
for money.
And that's the logical thing to do, but I can't sit here and say close the bridge where it's near business and commerce.
I understand that.
So,
For 5 miles, not a bad detour.
Okay.
no, and they're not going to have enough money anyhow, because they're cutting funding down.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Okay.
John?
I wanted to give you all a brief update on the Route 721
Okay.
issue. We actually had to go out and we've had an inspection on that bridge, and we've deemed that we need to move faster than what our current schedule is. So we'll be replacing a temporary bridge on Route 721. That temporary bridge will be able to carry legal loads, which is one thing. The bridge is currently posted at 14 tons. But in order to get that temporary bridge in, which will also be utilized during the construction of the project to keep that traffic on 721 open, we're going to have to close down the road for a minimum of 2 weeks. in order to get that bridge in. So we're hoping to have that done sometime in mid-February. We've put out an emergency contract to procure a bridge to put in place of that existing bridge to have one-way traffic on it. This is something that we didn't want to do, but the bridge, we feel that more than likely what has worsened the condition of the bridge is that we've had vehicles not really obeying the posted limit on the bridge, going back and forth, and it has really taken its wear on that bridge. So we're trying to move forward with accelerating this project, and the good thing about it is that the funds that we're utilizing right now to try to buy this temporary bridge will help offset the cost of the bridge project itself. This project is being funded out of King and Queen fully on their secondary 6-year plan. So we hope that it will impact the citizens for a short duration, but hopefully in the long run, it will help us accelerate this project and get it done.
And you said that'll take about 2 weeks?
At a minimum.
Okay. And when do you, and again, when do you plan to?
Well, as of right now, we're trying to procure the bridge, and we're hoping to have that sometime in February. So as soon as we get the procurement done and get the bridge in our possession, we're going to issue a news release, and I will update all of you all as far as when that will happen. Okay. We're going to post a detour route, and the county and the citizens will have an opportunity to see that detour route before the bridge is closed. There's going to also be a public hearing on, I believe, February 24th. So potentially while the bridge is closed, being worked on, we'll be having a public hearing regarding the actual project itself. And that public hearing will be held at Lawson Marriott School from 5 to 7 o'clock on February the 24th.
Okay. Are there other questions for Mr. Nelson regarding?
One quick one.
Okay.
Mr. Nelson, the bridge at 721, isn't that the same kind of bridge that we have on the other projects you're talking about?
I don't believe so. I'm not aware of the type of bridge on the other projects. For I know this bridge on 721 is actually, that bridge was built in 1952. So I'm not sure the age of the other ones, but this is a fairly old bridge on 721.
Okay.
The condition of the 721 bridge is far worse than the condition of the other two bridges that we're talking about. But we don't want those two bridges to get to that point.
And there is a bridge maintenance group at VDOT, right?
There's a bridge maintenance group with a huge responsibility of maintaining all these bridges, and we do a whole lot of it with our own state forces too.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Are there other questions?
Mr. Nelson, it's not a question, it's a comment. I just wanted to thank you. Driving home from work today, I saw the trash pickup had gone from basically Spotsylvania County line to Lake Landor, so I appreciate that. Are they going to be picking up the other side real soon?
We got pulled off of that today because we're getting ready for the snow tomorrow. So
right.
They were actually planning to get it done today, but they weren't able to. So it'll probably be next week before they get it up.
Okay.
The rest of it.
Yeah. Can you extend that a little further back towards 207?
639, 207.
I was nice, Sean. Come on.
Let me know where you're talking about, and we can.
From 639 just to Madison School, at least?
Okay. 639. Okay.
Okay. Other questions? If not, thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you all. Have a good one.
All right.
Thank you.
That takes us to appointments, Board of Zoning Appeals at large, Mr. Leo Satterwhite. Is there a motion to approve the at-large member?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Leo, of course, was the Madison District Board of Zoning Appeals appointee for many years, and with the redistricting, I think he's either in Jeff Black's district or maybe Mr. Underwood's district. I'm not sure, but I know he's out of Madison District. But I think he does a tremendous job. He did a tremendous job, worked well with the other members of the Board of Zoning Appeal, and unless other board members have someone else they'd like to, I'd make a motion that we'll reappoint Leo Satterwhite. He has shown willingness to serve again.
Is there a second?
Second?
It's been moved and properly second that we would reappoint Mr. Leo Satterwhite as the at-large member on the Board of Zoning Appeals. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries unanimously. That takes us to the Recreation Advisory Committee. Mr. Akins, do you have someone for that committee?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have anyone yet, but
Okay.
I'm looking.
All right. Okay, also the Board of Assessors, Madison, Mattapanai, and Reedy Church. Anyone have any?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to appoint Mrs. Kim Napier somewhere here I have her information. That's all that you need.
Okay, can we get a second? Second. Okay, it's been moved and properly second that we would appoint Ms. Kim Napier to represent the Madison District on the Board of Zoning, the Board of Assessors. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, and it's approved unanimously. Mr. Underwood, do you have someone?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask the board to appoint Ms. Karen Lambert to the Board of Assessors for Reed Church.
Okay. A second? Second. Okay, it's been moved and properly second that we would appoint Ms. Karen Lambert to the Board of Assessors to represent the Reedy Church District. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, and the motion carries. Do you have an appointment tonight?
Yes,
Mr.
Mr.
Thomas?
Chairman, I would like to ask the board to appoint Mr. George Parker of the Mattapan District to the Board of Assessors.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and properly second that we appoint Mr. George Parker to represent the Mattapan District on the Board of Assessors. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, and the motion carries unanimously. That brings us to the Community Policy and Management Team, Ms. Wendy Sneed. Is there a motion to approve Ms. Sneed for the Community Policy and Management Team?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we would approve Ms. Wendy Sneed for the Community Policy and Management Team. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, and the motion carries unanimously. That takes us to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any board member would like to pull?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to pull the minutes from the November 13th meeting.
Okay. Okay. That's agenda item A.
A.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda items B and C?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second?
It's been moved and properly second that we would approve consent agenda items B and C as presented. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the motion carries unanimously. Mr. Seeley, you have a question about the minutes?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. In the midst of the public hearing, I had several letters that were in front, and in discussion with Mr. Thomas, and I believe Mr. Underwood, I was going to read those letters, and the hour was getting late, and I was asked if I would not read them, and I said that was fine, but it was never really put as a motion. I would just like to add that I had acquiesced and agreed to not read those letters at that point.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to differ with that. As I expressed to Mr. Seeley and as Mr. Culley has checked the minutes, I do not recall Mr. Seeley asking me to read a letter. And in our recently approved board procedures, in public hearings, board members don't read letters, because I think that would be a little unfair, because anybody could send a letter in and not show up, and it's unfair to people that show up. If Mr. Seeley had somebody to read the letter, I would have let them read the letter, but I think the board members reading the letter puts us in a bad position. Again, if he wants to put that in the minutes, he can, but if he does, I would put in the minutes that I do not recall him asking that, and I did not turn him down from asking that. I do recall telling Mr. Black I wasn't going to let him read a letter for the property tax, and if I remembered that, I should have remembered Mr. Seeley's, but I don't remember his. So your discretion is advised.
Okay, so Mr. Seeley, you're just asking that the minutes reflect that you asked to read a letter and you agreed not to read it?
I agreed not to read because of the hour being late.
Okay, and Mr.
I'm saying,
And Mr. Thomas, you're saying
I'm
that you
saying
would like
I
for
do
it to
not
say
remember him asking,
okay.
and I don't think it's a good policy for the board to read letters when there's a public hearing. So if he had asked, and I recalled, I would have told him no, because that's not right. So if we're just talking about the minutes, and he wants to put in there that he asked me to read a letter, and I said no, that's fine. But if you put that in there, put in there that I did not recall him asking to read a letter, and if he had asked me, I would have told him no.
Okay, I think basically,
Mr. Underwood's got it.
Can I make a comment about this?
okay, Mr. Underwood.
And then I spoke to Mr. Seeley. Mr. Seeley, after we had closed the comments, asked to read the letter. And at that point, if mind serves me correct, I'm getting old now. My mind serves me correctly, that was the reason for not allowing the letter to be read, because we had closed, and I think, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Thomas, at that time, that was part of your comment that, I know you probably may not remember, but I know there were discussions about letters being read. I know Mr. Seeley said he had two, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But it was more to do with process than at that time, is what I recall.
Okay. Okay, I just believe at this time that it's happened, it's passed. The minutes can reflect that Mr. Seeley requested the reading of a letter, but chose not to. Mr. Thomas does not remember that particular incident, and leave it at that.
Nor is it documented on the video or audio tape.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Cully listened to the tape. He didn't hear it.
Well, why are we putting something into the minutes that is not there? Now, if we start doing this as a board, we are in big trouble.
Okay.
If we start inserting things that a board member 2 months later says, hey, I said, but the tapes doesn't back it up, there's a problem, Mr. Taylor. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, then what we can do is, we can leave this, we cannot approve this, we can table this. I will go over the minutes and also go over the video. And if it is not there, then we won't add it. If it is there, then we will. But we will just table this under the approval of these minutes until I've had a chance to do that. If that's okay with the board.
If we start that policy,
Okay, and
that
again,
is a road that you do not, I don't want to go down, and I trust the rest of the board members.
and again, I don't want to put anything in the minutes that's not there. But I want to at least look at it to see. If it's not on the video, then we'll assume that it's not there. Or the video didn't pick it up, so.
Mr. Cully's already listened to the video.
We have an audio, we digitally record these microphones, along with the video then that's videotaped. I listen to the audio from beginning to end and then back and listen to it again when this question arose. I heard some mumbling and some talk, but I couldn't detect what was said. When Pam had pulled the video up and reviewed the video, I looked at that particular spot, and Mr. Thomas was talking to me. There's some other places on the video where Mr. Thomas is talking to Mr. Seeley. It's not picked up on the microphone, so it's not in the audio. The video doesn't pick it up because it's not in the microphone. So we don't know what may have been said during the public hearing time, but there's no video evidence of that having happened, and there's no audio. And you're welcome to check it yourselves as well. But Mrs. Hall and I both worked on that quite diligently because it had been a question, and we couldn't remember because it was November. I mean, it really couldn't.
Okay, having said that, if there is no evidence that is recorded in the minutes and it was not picked up, then at this point I would say that the minutes will stand approved as read if I can get a motion to that effect.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented in the packet.
Is there a second? Is there a
second.
Okay, so we moved in properly second, then that the minutes will be approved as presented in the packet. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
The motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, on that note, can we solidify the board's policy that there will be no letters read by the board members at a public hearing? Because by definition, a public hearing is comments from the public at the podium. If they choose not to show up and give us a letter, the letter is part of the permanent record. We read it during our own time before or during the public hearing, but the board does not read letters during the public hearing.
Okay. Other comments? I would, Mr. Black.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. The thing I would say is we have a policy already in place for public hearings.
Yes.
And I would suggest that we just follow the policy that we have. I don't know that it's necessary that we add anything or that we take anything away. We'll just follow the policy that we have. And if the policy does not include board members reading letters, which it does not, then I don't know that it's necessary to add anything to the policy.
Well, but
We just need to go by the policy as presented.
if it doesn't say you can't read a letter, that means you could. It doesn't address whether we read letters at public hearings or not. That's my point. We need to formalize something that's pretty much been a courtesy, but as Mr. Seeley has pointed out, during an instance, and I'm not sure why, but during an instance, he wanted to read a letter. We don't read letters. We need to specify we don't read letters. Otherwise, I'm going to have somebody bring 30 letters here, and we have to read them during the public hearing. That's not how it works.
Other board members have questions, concerns?
Mr. Chairman, I do understand there to be a need for, but we can't write everything into policy. At some point, we have to use some level of common sense, and we cannot discard everything within policy. Policy is meant for guideline and common sense. So while I agree we don't want to read, those letters, but there may come a time, and I'm not sure when that time may be, but there may come a time when we have to make an exception because of something that occurs within the county, that we may have to read a letter, or we may have to make a comment. I don't think it's the rule, I think it's the exception, but I would hate to say just blanket no, because I know there are some good things that occur sometimes, and some there are things that happen to our citizens that we want to make other citizens aware. I can't think of anything specific now, but I certainly would just not like to close the door permanently and say we cannot do, we'd be out of order. So that's.
I think it's the chair's discretion. And I've heard what Mr. Underwood has said, and I've not understood that what Mr. Thomas is asking for is anything beyond the public hearing process. Now, the public hearing process is to allow people to speak. I get letters. We all did. I mean, I'm sure over this particular issue here, we all received letters where someone said, I cannot be there, I'm going to be out of town, what have you. None of us asked to read the letters. I received the letter. I knew what that person wanted and how that person felt. It was passed on to staff so it could put into the record. But what good would it have done me to sit here and to have read that letter? So I think with public hearings, we probably do need to put into the policy that no letters will be read during a public hearing. Now, from the board. Now, I have no problems, and I think Mr. Underwood is right. There may be other people that write us letters about other situations that we may need to read to the rest of the board members. And again, I'm not sure the letter that Mr. Seeley is speaking about, if it was one that he only received, or whether we all received a copy of those letters. If they did, I read it. I didn't need for him to read it to me again. I'm getting old and slow reading, but I do take my time and read. But so I don't need it to be read to me. I can read it myself. Okay. So public hearing process, I think it should be a policy.
And that's all I'm saying, Mr. Chairman, is just the public hearing process.
Mr. Seeley?
I support that.
I think it should be the board chair's option, depending on the situation.
As far as the reading of letters, personally, I feel like we all get a copy, and so we read them and we know what's in them because we read them. I don't know that it's necessary to read them aloud. I guess the other thing I would be saying is I'm just very leery about changing the policy and putting things in writing, because what seems like it's not going to be an issue, then before you know it, somebody comes up, there's a totally different situation, and then you place something in writing, and it stops you from doing something that you really need to do. We have a chairperson, and we usually leave things to the chairperson. We've all been, or not all of us, but most of us have been chairpersons at one time. And there have been things that I felt, but the chairperson at the time has ruled a different way. And so I just feel like, myself personally, you got a chairperson, and rather than to put something in writing that might create an issue down the road, the chairperson usually runs the meeting, they usually handle the public hearing. It's pretty much stated what the public hearing policy is, and my personal feeling is that's enough. If you want to change it, a motion is in order. Now, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that we add to the board's rules and procedures that during public hearings, letters will not be read by the Board of Supervisors, period.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that letters will not be read by board members during public hearings.
And to clarify, Mr. Chairman, the board at any time may vote to modify or rescind one of its rules. So even if we do that, you would still have the prerogative to make that change if the letter was that significant?
Okay. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Division of the House. Mr. Thomas, how are you? Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mr. Underwood?
Aye.
Mr. Akers?
Aye.
Mr. Sealy?
Nay.
And I vote nay as well. Vote 4-2, it passes 4-2. Okay, this takes us to is there something? Okay, is there something we can do on here? Okay. All right, let's move to number 6, unfinished business. Proposed Department of Fire and Rescue purchases from Emergency Services Capital Reserve. Chief, would you like to? Yes. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening.
Good evening.
Before you this evening, you have the project proposals, the expenditures that were allocated on the December 3rd board meeting as part of the Fire Rescue Capital Reserve Fund. What Ms. Hall is passing you out is an updated copy, and I'll explain that as we get down to the pricing. As you recall, there were 7 projects allocated on the December 3rd meeting. 3 of those are ready for your approval and ready to be executed. Those are the purchase of 3 staff vehicles and equipment, the GIS mapping project, as well as 1 mobile breathing apparatus or breathing trailer to supply our tanks that we wear on our backs. You have before you Mr. Parton's summation as well as the final pricing for each of those projects. The 3 vehicles will be purchased off state bid. For the equipment, we'll be leaning on the sheriff's contract with RCV for the installation of the lights, sirens, and radio equipment. Some of that radio equipment is under the radio grant, which will be installed for free. Some is not. The GIS mapping project is under an existing contract with Worldview Solutions through the planning department. And the last item, the air trailer, we were going to recommend to the board to purchase off Arlington's open contract for $125,000 and some change. We did get a final price in on Monday for $109,868 from another comparable air trailer. We've got 5 prices of air trailers. We ran this by purchasing. They said it was okay to purchase off the $109,000 versus purchasing off Arlington's contract. So there you have those 3 projects for funding.
Okay.
Questions?
Are there questions?
Chief, did you check, I see for Project 1, you're going to buy these vehicles off the state contract.
That's correct.
Did you check to see if there's any better contract vehicles than that?
We did not, no. We went off that state bid.
Okay, sometimes, and it's rare, but sometimes, especially in vehicles, the state contract is fairly old, and you can actually call a dealer up and get a better price. So I was just wondering if you'd done that.
No, but we certainly can.
Would you please?
Sure. Can we approve up to a certain amount, and then if we can find it lower?
Well, that's up to the rest of the board.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Black, do you have questions?
No questions at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Underwood?
No questions at the time, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, I guess and I think I probably expressed this at the meeting that it was initially talked about. I have a concern that we're talking about spending roughly, well, you say you have $387,000 that's in reserve, and you're spending probably 200 or better of that. When there are needs within the fire and rescue departments themselves, whether it be equipment, whether it be renovations, whether it be supplies and other things that they need. And I just have a concern of spending $80,000, well, actually more than that by the time we put the lights and the siren and the lettering, the console, and the radio, and the vehicles. Roughly $100,000 in 3 new vehicles for staff to ride around in. I just have a concern with that. And then saying to the various departments, you have to save every penny, and you have to cut costs, and you have to do what you can in order to make ends meet. And if they want something special, they have to go and do something else to get it in. I just have a concern with doing that. To be honest with you, I was here when the Emergency Service Department was established, and it was never my thought process or intention to take away from the individual departments and provide this type of equipment and expenditures for the Emergency Services Department at the expense of the Fire and Rescue Departments individually. I realize you saved money in your budget. I understand that, to get that reserve. But we need about, in 2 Ladysmith and Bowling Green fire departments, we need $298,000. And that would renovate those buildings, and it would repair those buildings. So I do not support this, and I have a concern with us doing this and taking away from the various departments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Mr. Seeley?
I think the chief
Can I
has a
respond?
response.
Okay.
Mr. Akers, we fund all of the needs of the individual stations, whether it be supplies or equipment, and no one is going without either.
Who is we?
Caroline County.
The taxpayers.
Caroline County, yes, sir.
That-
So those
that's
funds.
my point. That's my point. The taxpayers of the county are supplying their needs the best they can. Again, I just have a dislike for this, and I have a concern with this. I understand you're doing what you have to do and all that you can, but I have a concern with it as one board member, and probably the only board member that has a concern, but I have a concern with it. Thank
Yes, sir. One last thing, we budgeted for those renovation projects in this. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, well, Mr. Seeley first.
I'll yield to Mr. Thomas.
Okay.
may I ask just, Chief, the diesel, obviously, the cars you're replacing, or
Correct.
the vehicles you're replacing are diesels?
One is a diesel, that's correct.
One of the 3 is a diesel?
That's not being replaced.
It's
That's
being pushed down to someone else.
Transferred to another
Okay.
person, and then the vehicle he's driving is being replaced. So it's basically 3 old police sedans that are being replaced that were beyond the end of service life with the sheriff's department when we got them.
I was trying to find you a cost-efficient way to do that, because if you were going to replace diesel vehicles that go X amount of miles with the price of gas being down, you could save that money with diesels. Surely you have some documentation like that that says you're going to save X amount of dollars, and that's part of it, right?
That's part of it. And the expense on those vehicles is running us extremely high.
Would you like to share that with us
Sure, we
now,
can.
so we could maybe convince Mr. Akers that you're being a good steward of taxpayer dollars?
I didn't bring the expense totals for each of the cars that we're going to replace, no, sir.
Okay.
And some of those are being pushed down. As I said, one of the vehicles, the diesel, Chief Garnett is driving that. He does not need that size of a vehicle. There is no reason for him to be carrying a full complement of EMS supplies in that vehicle. It needs to be moved to the field personnel that do need to do that job.
But if you got something that might convince them, maybe you want to share that with us later,
Okay.
whenever.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Seeley and then Mr. Black.
I mean, I was the first to express that we were pushing these to staff, and I'm going to go one step further. When we decided to bring a chief, which was some years ago, just after I came to the board, staff came with it. Now, it has caused issues with the volunteers. Mr. Thomas and I have met with the volunteers over equipment and staff and volunteer advice, paid employee for fire and rescue. But the bottom line is that sooner or later, we've got to replace vehicles, whether these have 200,000+ miles on it, and I don't like the thought of, and I said it before, that it was just going to staff and not going out into the field. But if we're going to have folks in vehicles, one of them is going to Chief Mattiak, is that correct? Who is a volunteer, who is a chief, is the assistant chief in the field.
He is the operations chief of the department, correct?
And he is a volunteer, so at least one
That's correct.
vehicle is going to a volunteer. It's money that's been saved in the fire budget. Now, the packs are going, the trailer is going to be used countywide, correct?
It'll be housed in Bowling Green. It'll be used for this side of the county, Sparta, Port Royal, Frog Level, and Bowling Green, to meet their needs for air. If we have a fire, that's what we're going to bring to the scene. Therefore, down the road, we're not going to buy fire trucks with air systems on board. It's a cost savings for us. It's a 20-year trailer, but it also meets a daily demand.
I understand the cost, and I understand that it's coming out of the budget. We could talk about other things coming out of the budget and out of the general fund for stuff we didn't plan for next year. I won't quite go there tonight, but I know that we've got to spend money on fire and rescue. Though this isn't our first concern, I do agree that it's something we have to rectify. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Black?
Yeah, and you may have said it, just briefly go over again. What exactly, because I heard this statement that staff's just going to be riding around these vehicles, which I hope is not true. So can you explain to me what the purpose of these vehicles would be besides just riding around the county in them?
They're for employees, whether career or volunteer, to do the job when they come here. So you have Deputy Chief Vadiak, whose primary job is to respond out in the field. And so that vehicle would be a marked vehicle with a light bar on the top, primarily for him to respond to calls in the field. Deputy Chief Garnett is driving a 2002 Excursion that is equipped essentially as an ambulance. There is really no need for that, but there is a need for that size vehicle to be passed down to the operations captain because he is a licensed paramedic. He can respond instantly. That is a function of his job. So when he comes to work, that's the type of vehicle he needs to be in. Chief Garnett needs to be in an unmarked vehicle to go to meetings, to do other functions as any other county employee would be. If he is called upon, there will be internal lights in there, an unmarked car, if you will, for him to respond out on calls. The other vehicle would be used for training to replace an old Tahoe, which was previously purchased from Ladysmith, which I believe previously was owned by Mr. Schiebel. So that is a hand-me-down vehicle with a lot of miles and a lot of damage to it as far as maintenance and cost. That would be used primarily to bring supplies to training classes throughout the county. If it needed to be an emergency vehicle, we could make it an emergency vehicle. It would have lights and sirens, but it will have a minimum complement inside that vehicle. But all of these vehicles are strictly for one purpose, for when people come to work, so they have some way of doing that job.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I say one thing, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
You know, it's kind of, I think we're being a little disingenuous a little bit when we ask people to work within their budget and spend and save, and they find a way to save money, and then we nail them to the cross. If a person or an entity saves us funding and they believe this is the best way to spend money, that's why we have a fire chief to tell us what they need. Who are we to sit here and question? Certainly we can ask for explanation, but to question if there is a need, we're going a little bit beyond our seat.
Okay.
That's
Okay. And I would just say, we have a chief whose job it is to manage this department. And again, as has been said, this department has saved these funds. They're not new funds. They've saved these funds to address this issue. And the people whose job it is to make certain that funds are spent in the best way and that employees have the best vehicles and that the job can get done. If these people are saying that this is what's best, I'm not in the emergency services person, so I really don't know. Now, again, I don't, or at least I hope, we're not just buying vehicles for people to ride around in. I don't think that's the case. I don't believe that the chief would come here and do that. Now, is there a better way that it could be spent? I may have an opinion that says that, but I'm not the chief. So I guess my thing is, personally, I accept what you say. If you say this is the best way to spend these dollars and that this is a need and it's going to impact Caroline County in a positive way, it's going to help the people who work for us to do their jobs, then I will accept what you say personally. At that time, or at this time, I'll ask the board to determine how they would like to address this issue.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we allow the chief to spend the funds that were saved, the $387,000, as deemed in his proposal for the purchase of the 3 vehicles and the other support vehicles he needs to service the citizens of Caroline County.
Is there a second?
I'm going to second Mr. Underwood's motion, and that's for all 3 projects, Mr. Underwood?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to second his motion for all, I have 3.
There's 3 up there. There's still other pending projects which we're not ready for
Right, but you're
execution.
talking about just these 3. So
That's correct.
I'm going to second this motion for all 3 projects and ask the chief if he would provide additional documentation to the board for justification to make sure we can compare mileage, cost, diesel price going up or staying up, gas going down. And that will satisfy a lot of other folks. But the bottom line is I second his motion
I think I have to amend my motion
to ask about him to at least add the.
Right.
To include
So I need
documentation.
to amend my motion to include the second.
Include
documentation.
And just to check to see if we can get a better price from a local dealer.
I'll amend my motion.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Underwood.
did you have a concern?
We can check some other contracts that some other counties put out. I know every year York County puts out a police vehicle contract, and we used to buy police cars cheaper than on-state contract.
Right.
So we might be able to find that they have these same vehicles that they put out. So we can look at some other areas to see if we can find it cheaper than state contract. Don't mind that. And we can also price one at a dealer, but
Yeah, we don't always have the best prices state contract. And as a vendor, I know that was a great thing to buy off state contract because it was higher than it was if you asked me for a price.
Okay.
So I just wanted you to check again.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second that we would spend funds for the 3 vehicles as well as check for documentation to make sure that we're getting the best price and that the funds are being expended in the best way possible.
3 projects.
Oh, and I'm sorry, plus the other 2 projects.
Correct.
Now, but are we voting on those 2 now?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay, okay, the other 2 projects as well. Okay, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries 4-1. I'm sorry, 5-1.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, we'll take a break. My eyes are not as good as they used to be, but I think it's about 7:22. So we'll take about a 15-minute break. We come back at 7:35. The January 13th, Caroline County Board of Supervisors meeting. This portion on the agenda brings us to public comment. This is the period of time in our meeting when the public will have an opportunity to come forth and speak on any subject that's not covered on the agenda or in public hearings. We would ask that you stick to 3 minutes, come to the podium, give your name and your voting district if it's applicable, and if you have concerns regarding anything, feel free to express your concerns, as I said, as long as it's not on the agenda or a public hearing, and you keep it to 3 minutes. Having said that, I will now open the board meeting for public comments, and if there is anyone here who would like to speak, you may come forth at this time.
Gentlemen,
Yes, sir.
I know that we have to raise revenue in the county to keep from,
Excuse me, sir, I know your name, but just for the record, would you?
William Roy Southworth.
Thank you.
Bowling Green District, I'm sorry.
That's
I didn't
all right.
identify myself.
Thank you, Mr.
I
Southworth.
know we have to raise revenue in the county, and nobody understands that more than I do, because I hate every time taxes have to be increased to hit the real estate. But I am not in favor of the landfill that is proposed down, it's about 4 or 5 miles from me, but it's right across the road from a lot of friends of mine. And a landfill, I don't care if it's just for industrial purposes. A landfill, I don't think, is a good thing for the county to be promoting. And so I'm against the landfill coming to that, any part of the county, because I don't think if you decide to put it somewhere else, other people aren't going to want it in their backyards either. And so I just don't think it's a good revenue raiser. I think it was like $2 million a year that the county would get from that landfill. But, and also one other thing, and I'll quit. It's a LLC corporation, and I've voiced this to Jeff and to a couple of others, I think to Mr. Underwood and Mr. Black. But LLC corporation limits the liability of the principals. And if they're not willing to risk their assets to back the project, then why should we allow it to come in the county? If something goes bad with it, then the county is going to end up having to bear the brunt of cleaning it up instead of the people that brought it in. So that's it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Southworth.
Hello, my name is Timothy Payne. I'm from Madison District. My representative is Mr. Akers. Additionally, I'd like to say, Mr. Seeley, I appreciated meeting you at the Harvest Festival. We had a really nice conversation. The subject that I'm interested in talking to you about is funding. It's everybody's issue, but my particular issue is related to the schools. And how I'll approach this is, I have a son that is a freshman at the high school, and I have a son that's in 7th grade at the middle school. So I have a pretty good understanding of what their experience is and what my experience is. And my oldest son is in the marching band, and he's raring to go. He's participating in everything that he can. He's going to all these other schools, and what I've noticed is that the marching band is they're ambassadors for our community. They go out, they were at the Harvest Festival, but they go to other schools and they represent us. And one of the things that I can tell you is the uniforms that they have are 14 years old, and they're held together by clothespins. They're falling apart. They're dilapidated. Now, myself and many other members went to the school board, and we said, hey, we would like you to consider replacing these. And the cost, it looks like it'll be about $32,900. And the response of the school board was, we don't have the funding. Go talk to the board of supervisors. Now, Wayne and we've had many conversations, and I know what his answer is going to be. we don't spend the money, go talk to the school board. Which reminds me of Microsoft Windows. I have a problem, I click on Help. Help says refer to the manual. I open up the manual says refer to the online help. We're stuck in a loop here. I know you guys are meeting on the 27th, and what I hope is that you guys can come to an understanding over the budget. I know you have your issues regarding the details of the budget and how it's spent. I hope that you can come to some accommodation. This is something that these students really would like to have the new uniforms, to put pride in the school. Additionally, there is one other topic related to this that I wanted to mention. Both of my kids have no school books. You cannot imagine how difficult it is to study with your child for their test and they have no school book.
Mr. Payne, could you wrap up your 3 minutes?
Okay.
Thank you.
And what I would say is this: it's embarrassing that it doesn't happen, and they blame you, and we get in this loop, and I would hope that you guys can come together and fix this, because this is ridiculous. All right? I appreciate your time, and Wayne, I'll see you on the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. Payne.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Nina Southworth, and I'm in the Mattaponi District. I'm also here to speak against the landfill that is proposed for Route 301 and Route 656. There are several reasons that I would hope that you would vote against it. Number one is this landfill is going to be right across 301 from my childhood home, and my parents still live there. And it worries me about traffic. I just cannot fathom the amount of traffic that's going to be on 301. When there are backups on 95, the traffic on 301 is already bad. And I have to pull out onto 301 to get to my job, to go to the grocery store, wherever I need to go. I just can't imagine all these trucks coming down the road and trying to get out on 301. It also concerns me about school buses, the safety of the children. I work in a daycare. I am very passionate about children, and I would be concerned for them as well. Also, water quality, air quality, and pollution. I just would hope that you would vote against this. This is not what we need in Caroline. I would like to see that I can show my grandchildren one day what a rural community looks like and what it feels like to live in a rural community, a family-oriented community. So I would hope that you would please just vote against this. It's not what we need. Just yesterday, getting back to traffic, just yesterday my daughter was coming home from a friend's house. She was on Route 30. There were a couple of dump trucks ahead of her, and there were a couple of dump trucks behind her. I want you to imagine trucks coming off of 95 onto Route 30 to get to this landfill. There is a railroad track there. If there were to be a train coming through, think about the backup of these trucks plus other traffic that would be coming off of 95. So I would ask that you please consider, pray about it, and I would just pray that it would be a vote against. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Southworth. Are there other persons who would like to speak at this time?
I am Myrna Satterwhite. I live on Sunshine Road, and I'm in the Mattaponi District. And I guess most of you know I oppose this landfill, and I have some questions. And I heard that I may not get answers, but I still want to ask them. In the Freelance Star, on yesterday, it said there are 37 other parcels in the county eligible for the landfill. Would they be in any of you all's districts? Will they be in the Mattapan district? Will they be in the Rita Church district? Will they be in the same districts? Do you all know where these other 37 sites are?
I can't answer right now, Mrs. Satterwhite, but go ahead. We will try to address it at the
Okay,
end.
well, I would like to know that. And also, I have a question about this Caroline Recycling LLC. Who are they? It doesn't tell us much when it says they're formed by a former local elected official. Who is that? Do you all know?
Continue, Ms. Satterwhite. We will,
Okay, land development executive, civil, environmental engineer, waste management facility owners, business executives in the construction industry. Okay, and I also wonder, where is the money coming from? Who's footing the bill for all of these, for this building? And I know the county needs money, but we don't need it from a landfill, and we don't need it from Caroline Recycling. Thank you.
thank you, Ms. Satterwhite. Are there other persons wishing to speak at this time?
Good evening, Chairman,
Good evening.
board members. How are y'all today?
Good evening.
My name is Cherry Taylor. I represent the Port Royal District for Mr. Taylor. This is Kevin Pleasance. We are working under Oxford Mount Zion Baptist Church, where I'm president of the Young Adult Ministry, and he's a minister there. I don't know if you guys are aware, you probably are, but the past couple months, towards the end of 2014, we had a lot of gang violence with the youth going on and stuff, and arrests going on and shootings and stuff. And I'm very passionate about working with the youth, and I grew up in Carolina all my life, and we're proposing to do a Stop the Violence event in April. And basically what it's going to do is provide awareness in the county and unification between all parties in the Carolina County. That includes the local churches, schools, police department, hopefully you guys, just so we can bring awareness to the gang violence and the culture that's going on in Carolina. Because in rural areas, gang violence is among the leaders in gang attendance. So 56% of people in rural areas usually are in gangs in rural areas in comparison to urban areas. So what this event is doing is basically trying to bring awareness to the issue, unification in the community, and also just to give the people in the area, the youth, something to do for that day. So hopefully, I want to at least present this actual thing to you guys within the next board meeting or in February. I just need to know how I go about doing it, because I have a whole prep, like a PowerPoint, so it'd be more detail about doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as soon as we finish the public hearing, I will address that, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
My name is Wayne Burrell. I live at 26471 Richmond Turnpike in Ruther Glen, Reedy Church District. I'm here to talk about the landfill proposal. I can't figure out with the traffic pattern how this landfill is going to be productive at 301 when we're looking at 200 trucks a day traveling from Doswell to approximately a quarter mile from my driveway. That's 400 trips. That's 90 seconds per truck. Where we have domestic traffic, we have haulers, we have dump trucks, school buses. Now, I just don't understand how this road is going to be able to handle this kind of traffic. Getting away from that and getting onto the environmental part, they're calling this a dry dump. How's it a dry dump when they're digging 30 wells around it? This landfill is surrounded by wet I don't see how in the world they're going to keep water from coming off this dump site and getting into this wetland. It's going into Reedy Creek, goes into Mattaponi, York, and the Bay. I have not met one single person in Reedy Church or Mattaponi District that is for this dump. This dump is not progress for this county. I think that most people would agree they'd rather pay a higher tax than see a landfill come into this county. This landfill is not progress, gentlemen. It is totally the opposite. This land will never be able to be used for anything else. So when y'all get this agenda ahead of you, you better look at this very closely. As the woman said, there are 38 sites that would be available for dumps in this county. I'm just wondering, any of you gentlemen would be willing to live next door to a dump? Because that's what you're asking a lot of people in Reedy Church area to do. And they're not for it. They're totally against it. So I'd appreciate if you kept that in mind when the time comes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Are the other persons wanting to speak?
Yes, I'm Wilbert Whitaker in the Mattaponi District, and Board of Supervisors, I speak tonight in opposition of the proposed landfill off Route 301. I was born and raised in this county, and I've been a taxpayer all my life. I understand the growth and raising revenue, but at what long-term cost? I've spoken with hundreds of citizens in Caroline County, and the overwhelming majority of the people I've spoke with are dead against this. I beg you, let's don't take the easy route, take a dump just to increase revenue. Roll up your sleeves. Let's work to bring good and welcome growth to Caroline County. Let's build a county we can be proud of and a strong county to pass on to our kids. Growth is good, but shouldn't be done without a lot of thought and research. There will be bigger and better opportunities that don't have to include a dump. Let's show some Caroline pride and do what's best for our county. But most of all, let's listen to our citizens. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
My name's Larry Parks. I live in Mattaponi District, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Relatively newcomer to the county. We've been here for about 10 years. I was born about 80 miles north of here. And, you know, when I've listened to the discussion of what this liner is going to be like in the dump, they say it's rated to last 150 years. My family, meaning my sister, my brother, my mother, now live on a family farm that's the family's been on for 200 years. I know people out here in the audience that are sitting on family property that's been in their families for that amount of time. So you stop and think about 150 years and look at you gentlemen, and most of you are half that age now. So if you've got a grandchild or a great-grandchild that's, 2 or 3 or 4 years old, that's your lifetime and that child's lifetime. And this landfill's going to, the liner's going to fail. So, think about what's going to happen. When it fails, it's going to affect the surface water. It's going to affect Reedy Creek. It's going to affect those properties right around it. Oh, by the way, I'm one of those adjacent properties. And this is just a bad idea. And, just a bad idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
For the record, I'm not half that age.
But Mr. Black, you really should feel bad.
Tim Whitaker, Reedy Church, just reiterating what most people have said about the dump. I don't think it's the right path for revenue for the county. It's a rural zoning area now for a reason. It's an agricultural zoning area now for a reason. To make an exception, to put in a dump, rezone it to indoor. What's the point of being rural or agricultural to start with? So that's my point. Every public hearing has been overwhelming majority of the citizens are against it. I hope that's getting through. I think it probably is, but I guess we'll see. Thanks.
What's your name, sir?
Say again?
Could you tell me your last name?
Whitaker.
Whitaker, okay.
That was my older brother came up here, and like he said, it's a funny story. I went on Ancestry. We've been here forever. So.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Kevin Moen. I live in the Bowling Green District, and one would think that because I live in the Bowling Green District that I wouldn't have a dog in the landfill hunt. I get my water from the town of Bowling Green. But I do have a dog in the hunt. I have the pleasure of being the pastor of the Concord Baptist Church in Frog Level, a congregation that's been ministering and serving in this community, county, commonwealth, and creation for 174 years. I look behind me tonight, I know that there are several members of my congregation, some of whom are angry, some of whom are anxious, and most are afraid for what the future holds. I come before you tonight with a simple request. The simple request of killing the requested zoning request by Caroline Recycling. That's simple. Why? When I looked at one of my constituents, my congregation, face to face with the tears coming down her face, I said, "What's bothering you?" She said, "I've been through this before." I said, "What do you mean?" Having moved here just from 2 counties up a decade ago, having moved into their retirement dream home designed by their architect son, thinking they were going to spend the rest of their time in bucolic Caroline, and then with the fear and the anxiety and those feelings that are coming back again after watching Stafford develop in her backyard. So they escaped to what we enjoy as Caroline County. Thank you, Mr. Underwood and Mr. Thomas and Mr. Seeley for attending those meetings at the Rurtan and at Mr. Underwood's meeting. If others of you were there and I didn't see you, I'm sorry. It was some interesting times together. Somewhat kin at times to a WWE Battle Royale, where lots of voices were heard, most of which, matter of fact, I think all but 2 voices were negative. A small microcosm of the Reedy Church and the Mattaponi districts. Only a probably total of 250 individuals showed up at those. But there were 250 voices that were experiencing some anger and some real angst. I have not lived here for generations like many of our folks have. I've just been here, since 2003, and have been grateful for what I've enjoyed here. But, I also heard something that many folks were saying, if you can't kill the zoning amendment, allow the people to speak for you, such as a referendum in November, not in May or June, but in November. Put it on the ballot and allow the people to decide. Don't take the 30 pieces of silver, as attractive as it may seem, but and then feel regret later on. But allow the people then to decide for you. I would encourage you, if you can't kill the zoning amendment, to at least consider a ballot referendum. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there other persons who wish to speak at this time?
Good evening. My name is James Baker. I live in the Mattaponi District. I'm here to voice my opposition to the proposed tax amendments in landfill. I have lived within 2 miles of proposed landfill location all my life. I worry about the effects this would have on property values. I also worry about the environmental impacts that this facility could cause. I am concerned about the possible contamination of our water system. I worry what materials would be brought to our area. Even if some materials are banned, what guarantee can we get that those materials wouldn't be brought in with allowed materials? One problem operators of these landfills have is the receipt of non-identifiable materials. That is material that has been so destroyed and processed that it is impossible to identify them. Therefore, there is no way to guarantee they are not banned hazardous materials. I have also concerns about air quality. I worry about smoke from fires, which is a very real possibility. I am worried about particles from debris being transported through the air. I am concerned about odors from this facility. One, odors are a problem that are a common complaint from residents living near this type of landfill. I know they say odors wouldn't be a problem, but all landfills are biologically active, therefore producing gases and odor. One odor problem from these types of landfills is from hydrogen sulfide, which emits a rotten egg smell. One material that produces this is pulverized wallboard. I would certainly believe that product would be in demolition waste. One site in Ohio had approximately 2,000 complaints from over 100 citizens about odors. Another issue I've had is the proposed location of this facility. From a logistical viewpoint, I don't see the benefits of this location. I don't believe this area has the infrastructure to support this facility. I especially feel the road system is inadequate for this facility. 301 is a 2-lane road with limited passing zones. I drive it every day to and from work. I already see a lot of people taking unwise chances to get past vehicles. The great increase in truck traffic would greatly increase the possibilities of accidents, resulting in injuries and possible death. I also wonder about the wear and tear of the roads from the great increase in truck traffic. What would the increased cost of maintenance be due to this wear and tear? I feel that a facility like this should be near an interstate or 4-lane road. Lastly, I would just like to say that we citizens elected you, the board, to represent us and have a voice for us. I am asking you to please hear our voices and speak for us. Say no to these text amendments and proposed landfill. We do not need nor want this in our beautiful Caroline County. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there other persons who wish to speak at this time?
Good evening. My name is Bill Samolsik, and I'm a proud homeowner in Caroline County.
Good evening, sir.
I came here about 6 years ago from New Jersey. I can only say that it's probably the most populated and most dense populated state in the Union. What I have seen over the years I lived up there is ludicrous. People with money, people with bright ideas on how to make more money, come up with all kinds of ideas like landfills. Yes, it's necessary. Where do you put it? I don't know. I don't think it should be in Caroline County. There are so many other ways that revenue for taxation can be made. And among those ways, which I was against a landfill in New Jersey about 15 years ago, nearby where I lived. And what we found was the zoning board, the people that had interest in the community, and homeowners sought for ideas other than what I call not clean industry. Among those industries that were taken and used and are still today present where the area of South Brunswick, New Jersey I'm from, they came up with warehousing. This is for tax revenue purposes. High-tech industry, such as computer and cell phone. Clean water products industry. Even tech schools are up there now in the area that I was. This is all in the last 15 years. They put their heads together, they did their homework, and they studied other ways of finding ways of getting revenue for the county of South Brunswick. I don't see any reason why we can't look a little further, get our heads out of the sand, and think of something that's going to get us the money and get the clean industry that we should and deserve here as members of this county. There's other ways of doing it. There's many other distribution companies. There's an entire area in South Brunswick. It's about a 5-mile area off of Route 130. And it's been very successful. It works. Now, here's another question. Why is a landfill coming from Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, New York? The reason is they're full. With 13 million people living in New Jersey, where do you put all of this stuff? There's always construction. There's always waste. The thing that they found was they couldn't do it anymore. Legislators decided, no, we got to send it somewhere else. So where do they go? They're going to go to an area where they feel it's easy, where the people don't have sense enough to understand the detriment to something of this sort. Needless to say, all of the things that you've heard from our people in the community, they're worried about many things, and so am I. I mean, I'm at an age now where it doesn't really count so much, but...
Could you wrap it up, please, Mr.
Sure, I
Samosa?
will.
Thank you.
After I'm through. The fact is, cancer is prevalent in this country. It's the best hidden secret there is in this country. And this is going to cause cancers in this area. And if you don't care about your children and your future, there's something wrong here. I'm sure you people are wise enough to understand this.
Mr. Samosa, I've allowed you to go an extra minute. Would you please wrap it up?
I will.
Thank you.
Just don't make this landfill a major mistake. And we're
Thank
going to be responsible for not only our children, but the future for the improvement of Caroline County. We're in a position between Maine and Florida that this place could use a lot of other clean industry and solve a lot of problems. We have to think on how to get this done.
I hear what you're saying, Mr. Samosa. I have to ask you to stop
I
now.
appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak? Anyone else like to speak? Last time, is there anyone else who would like to speak? I would like to thank you very much for your concern and for your being here tonight. Mr. Underwood has asked me to just ask all those folks in the audience who are in opposition to the landfill to just stand, if you would do that. Yeah, just stand so he can see a picture. And again, we thank you very much for being here. And you may be seated. He just wanted to see a mental picture, which he knew that they were anyway, but he just asked you to stand. And as you know, we really don't address individual comments after a public hearing, but we want to try to give people an answer. And as far as the landfill is concerned, no decision has been made on the landfill. And that's one of the things I would like to emphasize. Some people feel that the board has already made up its mind, and I can assure you that no decision has been made. The board has not made up its mind. We have allowed a company to come in to talk about what they have to offer and to disseminate information and for citizens to have an opportunity to react to it. And that's exactly what has happened. Citizens have reacted to it. They are still reacting to it. And I can assure you that what you have to say is being heard by the board. And no decision, again, has been made. The Planning Commission has turned down this request already. We are in the process of doing the text amendments. Whether or not they will pass or not remains to be seen. But again, I assure you that you are being heard and your ideas and your concerns will be addressed. If I could just say, I think the lady asked about the 37 parcels. Could you take a minute to just talk about that, Mr. Fincham?
Mr. Chairman, that same question was asked by several members of the Planning Commission. What that was a GIS analysis of parcels in the county that met the proposed development standards, minimum parcel size, access, et cetera, et cetera. So it was just a quick snapshot. How many properties in Caroline County might qualify for this type of use?
Okay. Okay. In addition to that, I think there was some talk about the funding, school funding, I believe band uniforms, and as Mr. Payne said, you know, and not passing the buck, but we do try and provide as much. We do try and provide as much financial assistance to the school system as we can. But once we give them an amount of money, it is up to them to determine what they do with it. But we are going to be meeting with the schools, and we'll be talking with them, and we'll do everything we can to try to provide as much assistance financially to the school system as possible. And to the young man who talked about the Stop the Violence, I thank you for being here, and I would ask that you talk to Mr. Parton, who's sitting right there. When you get your program together, if you want to come to the board to make a formal presentation to the board, we welcome you to do that. We'll give you the opportunity to do that. And Mr. Parton can tell you the specifics of how you go about making that happen.
Oh, he's back.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Could I help on that same note? Mr. Major Mosier informed me about a program at St. John this Sunday, or this Saturday at 9 o'clock, which is basically the same type of thing, a Stop the Violence program. So that may be one you can start now, and then you can do your own in April. And I do appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. And I spoke to Mrs. Satterwhite yesterday or day before yesterday, and she knows exactly how I feel. If you want to ask her, she'll tell you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, let's move along to agenda item number 5. Let me just close the public comment. We will declare the public comment now closed. And we'll move to agenda item number 5, text amendment 11-2014, an ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of Caroline County by amending Article 12, Section 1, lot area and other dimensional requirements within districts by amending paragraph H to increase the maximum height allowed for buildings in the M1 industrial district to 125 feet.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is your one and only public hearing tonight. As the board is aware, when looking at industrial development opportunities in the county, we're always faced with changing situations regarding the needs of industry. The proposed text amendment before you tonight is actually similar to an amendment the board considered several years ago for McKesson, where we had prospective industry in the county. Their needs for their specific industry necessitated an amendment to the zoning ordinance to actually increase the height of the structure. The request before you tonight is from a similar circumstance. We have a situation where we've been apprised of through other departments in the county where we have industrial users in need of limited amendments to our ordinance to increase the height of their structures. Might be based upon equipment storage, storage systems, et cetera, et cetera. The proposed amendment would allow an increase in the height of an industrial structure. If you read it, it's subject to additional setbacks from abutting properties to make sure you don't have an extremely tall structure right next to, say, a residential property or something like that. In a nutshell, this is the next iteration in terms of industrial needs for perspective and potentially expansion of existing industries in the county relative to their operations. With that, I'll address any questions the board may have.
Does board members have questions for Mr. Fincham prior to the public hearing? If not, at this time, I will open the public hearing for text amendment 11, 2014 as presented. Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Again, is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Seeing no one with the desire to speak, I will declare the public hearing closed, and I will ask the board how they would like to proceed with this text amendment.
Mr. Chairman, since this was a text amendment for prospective business, I would make a motion that we approve it.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we would approve text amendment 11, 2014 as presented. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Can we have discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Is there discussion? Yes, sir. Okay, Mr. Black?
Yeah, the only thing that I saw, and it's been a question that I had, is in dealing with structures that are this high in the county, I don't think we have one that would be this high. It would be the tallest building in the county if it came in, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I guess the only question I would have on this is dealing with fire suppression. As far as can we handle that? As far as do we have the water pressure? Do we have? I mean, that would be, I guess, the big concern. And I don't know if that's something that you can answer, or the fire chief can answer. Or, is that something that's been addressed?
That would have to be addressed during the building design process, but Mr. Schiebel is here, can address that question from the utility perspective, and Mr. Whiteman may want to address that from the building code perspective. But that's an issue we routinely have to address with any industrial building, is ensuring adequate pressure and flow.
Mr. Black, any such buildings like that would end up with a fire pump and probably on-site storage, and I mean it all has to be designed to meet the fire code. Now we probably don't have an apparatus that'll go up that high, but that would be sprinkled and meet all of the building code requirements, and then on the utility side would have pressurized pumps that would come on and fight that fire.
They'd have to have their own storage tank,
That's
basically.
that's right, their own capacity of water, that's correct.
System, so it's all self-contained.
That is correct.
Okay. Other discussion? Okay. It has been moved and properly seconded that we approve text amendment 11, 2014 as presented. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries unanimously. It takes us to new business. Agenda item 7, the first reading of the proposed text amendment, text 03 through text 05, 2014, temporary quarters in M1 district. Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is also somewhat of a rehash of similar requests that the board considered several years ago. We have an existing industry in the county that does a lot of governmental work as well as large systems for private contracts. They're in the one aspect of their facility is designing new systems. They have approached the county about the potential for temporary quarters for contractors or for their own employees that might come from another facility elsewhere throughout the United States for a specific project that they may be on site for 30, 60, 90 days, something like that, relative to a specific project. Their desire is to have these contractors, outside employees of theirs, temporary housing facilities to lodge those individuals on site for during the duration of a project. The proposed amendments before you tonight would, one, create a definition for this type of temporary residential unit. Two, would allow it by special exception in the M1 zoning district. And 3, would establish some fairly lengthy development standards that would have to be met for an individual application above and beyond any conditions that might be imposed by the Board of Supervisors. That is it in a nutshell. We've worked closely with economic development and a couple of board members in the preparation of this text amendment.
Mr. Fincham, and I don't know whether this has already been addressed, but I guess one of the concerns I have is enforcement. A lot of times when these particular issues are originally talked about, the purpose for which, we're looking at is fine, but we end up having people there for other purposes, and it just sometimes creates a totally different situation than what we were looking for at the time.
Yes, sir.
So I guess enforcement is a big concern that I have, and what is that going to cause a lot of strain on our law enforcement now, or talk about that a little bit.
Enforcement of temporary occupancy is always an issue, okay? We have attempted to, realizing that we are not going to be out there every day and just cannot be out there every day monitoring these types of uses. Within the standards, we tried to limit it to certain types of uses. A secured facility, so where it's not open to the public, you just can't go in and out of sight. At least a yearly log where the owner of the facility has to provide us all the information relative to the occupancy that we can look at. And certainly something like that could be tied into a board review every year, every couple of years, to actually look at the usage of those types of facilities. But yes, you're correct. Monitoring temporary occupancy is always an issue, and it would be impossible for us to be out there every day or every week monitoring that type of use.
Yes, sir. Are the board members have other questions regarding the text amendment? Mrs. Seeley?
Mr. Fincham, one of the other temporary quarter industrial facility standards I would like to potentially talk about is if somebody else were to come along, the size of the facility, in excess of 50 or 60 or 70,000 square feet. Because 150 acres isn't, there are plenty of parcels like that. What I want is somebody with a real investment in the county if we allow this.
Okay.
Under roof, manufacturing and storage, I think should be some sort of a guideline so that we can further narrow down this type of facility.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, so at this point, we need to go ahead and advertise, do the first reading.
This is the first reading. You can continue the first reading. Mr. Seeley has provided us another suggestion which we could incorporate into the standards for your consideration. You can continue the first reading. We can come back to the board on the 27th, have some language to address Mr. Seeley's thoughts on the facility issue, or you could advertise for public hearing. We could build something in. It's up to the board.
Which direction would the board like to go as far as the text amendment? Hearing Mr. Seeley's concern, adding that and going on for public hearing, or continuing the first reading?
Mr. Fincham, that shouldn't be difficult to add, those parameters, should it? Size of facility?
No, sir. We have the size of a current facility, so we could take that and easily incorporate that as
I mean, if there-
standard 11.
If there are no objections, I don't,
Is that the way to make it as restrictive as possible?
it's the only other thing I could think of.
Number of employees?
If that's, yeah, I mean, they go up and they go down. Size of, I'm looking for investment in the county. I'm looking for
Right.
somebody that's got a solid investment.
But you don't want my at-home business to all of a sudden throw up in
Oh, no, but
temporary
the
buildings. That's
size,
what I'm
the
saying.
size of this facility would really limit. That's what I was more afraid of with the acreage secure, but a facility that does manufacturing and warehousing that is of a substantial size, that their tax base is such that, that was my thought.
I just think number of employees would be a little bit more difficult to track. But if we're talking about the size of the building that Mr. Seeley is talking about, then you aren't going to have, that's going to probably limit the number of people in itself.
Size of the building
Chairman.
or revenue generated in the county or something
Right,
like that?
right.
That's all I'm looking for, make it as restrictive as possible.
Mr. Chairman, my concern is, I'd like to see the existing entity do all they can first before we go down the slippery slope, because it could be one, very slippery slope, that once we open the door, then we could have issues. So I'd much rather, before we go down this road, first, make sure that all avenues have been, every I dotted, every T crossed, to make sure that everything's done possible before we get to this text amendment.
So we could continue the first reading until we hear the language, and then we could make a determination at that time if we want to go to public hearing or go to the second reading.
Mr. Chairman, can I add one? We are going to enforce this or allow this only by special exception. So by special exception, each application is judged on its own merits. And I understand Mr. Underwood's concern of if I do one, the next one is easier. But we're also making it as restrictive as possible. So, as I said before, my home-based business can't throw up buildings in the backyard to all of a sudden do this. It's going to be restricted. It's going to be by special exception. I understand his concerns, but I think we should go ahead and move along because we've already lost one business that wanted to do this, and now we are trying to assist a second one who wants to do this. So I see what you're saying, but we can restrict them with, with special exception.
Might I offer a suggestion? The earliest public hearing you could have would be your February 10th meeting, which I believe is your only February meeting. We could continue this to, continue the first reading to the 27th with the idea that we're shooting for a public hearing at February 10th. And if we still have concerns after the continued first reading on the 27th, the board can always vote not to hold the public hearing on the 10th.
Chairman?
Sounds good.
Mr. Chairman?
Pardon?
We would already have advertised for that, though. If you're going to have it on the 10th of February, we're going to have to advertise before the 27th of January.
It would, yeah. We'd have to put a retraction in the paper at the next meeting.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Black?
I just have a question dealing with this, I'm sorry. As far as this is concerned, is there precedent in other localities to do this? Have other localities done something like this? I guess that's the only thing is there a guideline to go by? I mean, that's the only, Mr. Underwood had talked a little bit of concern about precedent and stuff like that. I was just wondering if, I would imagine that when something like this happens, they would put their employees in extended stay hotels and so forth, and I don't think we have those per se in Caroline. But I was just wondering if there's any sort of precedent where other localities have done this.
Not much.
Okay. All right, so this would be unique. Okay, thank you.
We do have extended, do we not? Isn't the studio, whatever?
No, sir.
That's not legal. They advertise extended stay, but they're not
But
legal.
they're doing it. And that's what bothers me with this, is the fact that you could very well approve it. And as you say, it's not legal, but they do it. I just believe personally that there should be more discussion, more thought about it. But again, feel like it's,
Okay, if we advertise it for the 10th of February, we would have to start that advertising process now. If we got to the 27th and we did not like the language or wanted to change, then we would have to do something like a retraction if we did not want it to go to.
If you did not
the 10th.
want to go to public hearing. But the other options, continue first reading and shoot for a public hearing at your first meeting in March. If the board as a whole is
Okay.
comfortable with an amendment.
And I thought there was some sort of time constraint for us to make a decision for this particular business.
So you're talking about February the 10th or March? Okay, it seems that the consensus seems to be to continue the first reading until January 27th, and do not advertise a public hearing. We probably will look at sometime in March.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
I thought there was a time.
do we need a motion to? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, before you postpone it, and I understand the discussion, but this is an existing business that brings a fair amount of revenue into the county that does not necessarily want to put its employees up in the hotels that we have in the county. And they've made that explicitly clear. And I believe that this business was under a time constraint to have this approved pending some expansion that would go behind this. So I understand our discussion and our concern, but we just had a whole bunch of people say they didn't want landfill, increase our taxes, nobody wants to do that. We want to make sure we get this revenue before the business says, hey, we're out of here.
And I guess that's my concern. I was wondering if there's is between February 10th and March, is that going to be a big deal? Is that going to be enough to make this business go away?
March is springtime. What I would recommend is if that we advertise for our February meeting, continue the public hearing till the 27th. If there are any other questions, any concerns, I think this discussion may alleviate a few of those concerns. But if there are any concerns on the 27th, we address those. Still, we'd be able to have the public hearing in February 10th, give them an opportunity to start their construction project in March, April.
This is just a text amendment. They're going to have to
Right.
apply for the special exception, so.
See, and they can't apply for a special
That
exception
doesn't
until we have the
exist.
text amendment. So we're already going to delay them until April before they can start construction. And they've got people coming in and out, and they're talking about expanding, and we're sitting there pulling the reins on it.
Well, I don't know that we're pulling the reins on it. I think what I hear is there's an uncertainty as to whether or not this is the direction the board wants to go. So, I mean, on one hand, we don't want to hold up a business, but on the other hand, we don't want to put something into place that's going to create an issue down the road. I guess we have to determine which way we want to go.
I'm going to make a motion.
Okay.
I will make a motion that the board advertises this text amendment for public hearing at our February 10th board meeting. I will also ask that we continue our first reading until our next meeting. That gives us the option of canceling the public hearing, which is easier than trying to turn the clock back because we won't have enough time if we decide on the 27th. So that gives us both options.
Okay. Just one question. The retraction of the public hearing, does that involve costs? What are we talking about when we say?
No, we can still have the public hearing. We can still have it.
Well, if we...
You could still have the public hearing on the 27th. You could still
On the
make
10th.
technical change,
On the
I mean,
10th.
on the 10th, I apologize.
Right.
You could still make some technical modifications within reason, even after the public hearing. There was a substantial change to the standards. We'd have to talk to legal counsel about whether it was substantial enough that it was needed to go back to public hearing again. But you can have your first reading on the 27th. We could still actually have the public hearing on the 10th, even while you are discussing modifications.
Okay, we need a second to Mr. Thomas's motion.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and properly second that we would continue the first reading until the 27th, but go ahead and advertise public hearing for February 10th. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Fincher. That takes us to agenda item number 8, first reading of proposed zoning text amendment, text 02-2014, amendment to Article 17, administration and enforcement requiring up-to-date payment of real estate taxes.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this proposed text amendment would add a paragraph to the current zoning ordinance under administration and enforcement in which if an applicant came in for a development application, be it a permit for new construction of a single-family dwelling, an E&S permit for land disturbance, rezoning, subdivision, special exception, state code allows localities to provide proof that the owner is up to date with their current real estate taxes. We've had some situations in the past where perhaps an owner was not up to date and still was allowed to go through the process. This, I think, would address what might be a loophole and allow us to make sure that an applicant for a permit within these provisions is up to date with their real estate taxes into the county and make sure everything is current with respect to that.
Okay.
This is also a first reading for you all to look at this. So this is the first time you've seen it.
Board members have questions regarding the first reading?
I do have a question.
Status.
So, if they haven't paid the taxes, they have 5 years, is that correct? I think that's a number, or 3 years, I think I've heard 3 years. And if they don't pay the taxes within 3 years, the county has the ability to put it up for auction? Now, I understand.
Yeah.
You're talking about a person that owes property on a current house or land or whatever.
On taxes.
I mean, owes taxes.
Correct. When they
Okay.
came in to apply for a permit,
Yeah.
Yes, sir. It has.
I don't know, many times there are mitigating circumstances, and I know we've talked about this tax issue for a long time, and in some cases, it's come back to bite the board members, if you would, as far as with their constituents and what have you. I want everybody to pay their fair share of taxes. That's always, I pay mine. I'm quite sure that every board member pays theirs, and everybody else must pay their own fair share of the taxes. But I think also we can sometimes go overboard in what we are trying to do. And I don't know who brought this up. It may have been staff that brought this up. But if you owe taxes, or if an individual owes taxes on a piece of land or on their home, and within 3 years the county has the right to put it up for auction. Is that correct? After 3 years, it can be put up and sold. And we get our tax revenue from that. They may want to go ahead and build a house, and you're going to collect taxes on that as well. I'm just not sure why restricting someone from coming in and applying for a permit to take trees down. That's land disturbance. If they want to take trees down, if you owe tax on your property, you can't do it. I just don't know that we aren't becoming too restrictive on the people as to what they can do with their land. To be honest with you, realize they deserve to pay the taxes. I understand they have an obligation to pay their taxes. I understand that completely. But the Treasury has put in place a lot of means in order to collect those taxes.
And I think that might just be the issue. If, with all of the measures that have been put in place and they still have not paid, why would you want them to build or get into a position where they still even owe more funding to the county. And I guess that's, I mean, I don't know if that's the way, if that was the idea behind it at first. Was when you got a person who already owes taxes, and, you know, with all that's been in place, they've not paid them, but yet and still they want to come in and do something else within the county that would be further indebted. And if they haven't paid taxes on what they have, they want to build another house or whatever it is that they want to do.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Underwood and then Mr.
Mr. Chairman, I would have to respectfully disagree with my colleague, Mr. Akers. Clearly, we have processes and procedures in place for taxpayers, and we all receive our tax bills, and we're all under the same guidance and purview. Why would we want to change to allow a person to do additional things when they haven't taken care of the basic part, and that is to pay your taxes? I just respectfully disagree, and we need this amendment in place, not allowing people to continue to be indebted to the county and reap benefit. There is a price to be paid. All of us pay for services that are provided by the county. And we can't make loopholes and exceptions for people. That's just not right. It's not fair.
Well, Mr. Thomas and then Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chairman, I just mentioned to Mr. Black while we were discussing this, if I had not paid my taxes in December, and yet I went to Mr. Fincham for a permit to put a deck on the back of my house, based on this, I would not be allowed to do it. So I think that's the extreme case of where we are and what would happen here, but I understand the intent. And maybe the intent could be modified a little to say that after, because we only have 3 years. So maybe I didn't pay my taxes in December. I get a year to catch up on my taxes before I build something.
Mr. Chairman?
Or something of that nature.
Mr. Black, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Black?
I guess for me, it's, and I was the one who was pushing this thing. And we just went up on taxes 11 cents. We just did an 11-cent real estate tax to pay for, to pay, well, the voters, whoever, the taxes went up 11 cents. But the point is this. The point is, how can we go back to raise taxes when we're not enforcing the people that already owe us the taxes? I have a hard time going back and saying, hey, we need to go back for a 2-cent tax increase when someone is coming to the county who owes us, because there was a business a few years ago that owed us, that we granted a permit to, that they owed us $8,000, and we gave them a permit. And we said it was okay. And that's not okay. To me, that is not okay. If they owe the county money, we shouldn't be giving them favors until they pay their taxes.
You want to make a commercial? Yes, commercial and not residential?
Right. This still won't solve that problem.
Because the reality is, if we go through this list of all the people who didn't pay their taxes that you asked before, the top 20 or 30 were businesses that are out of business. They're never going to ask for anything because they're out of business. So the purpose is not going to be satisfied. I mean, I understand all that. I think the residential part of this is going to be an issue to citizens.
Mr. Seeley?
You know, during Mr. Cully's first budget session with us, we all were shown something that was interesting. There's 1-year, 2-year, and 3-year delinquent taxes. Some people purposely stay 2 years behind in taxes because they can keep the money longer, they know nothing will happen. There's a whole segment of folks who think that's okay. If they want to build something else and they want to stay 2 years behind in their taxes, you know, we learned that we don't see, if you increase taxes last year, you won't see the full effect of the tax increase for 3 years because people purposely stay behind. So if you allow those folks to continue to live the way they want, and and not pay the taxes that everybody else is paying up front, I don't think that's right. And I think we've learned that through the budgeting process. And I do agree that you should be up to date and current when you come apply for any permit in the county. My thoughts.
So we have to decide, do we want to continue the first reading, or do we want to go to public hearing? And just like anything else, whenever we decide on a policy, we help some people, we hurt some people. And sometimes we hurt people we don't want to hurt, but that's the only way to generate the funds that we're talking about. Our idea is to try to get people to pay their taxes, because we know if we could get 100% of the people to pay their taxes, we'd be far better off financially as a county. And what we have to decide is, is this going to be more beneficial to that end? Are we going to hurt more people by doing this? Or are we going to generate more revenue or get people to do what we've asked them to do in the first place? And I think that's the issue.
Mr. Chairman, just have one comment, then I'm through with it. Looking at my district over the last 4 years, I have seen cutoff notices for folks for their septic tank because they were 2 months behind and owed $68. Lady, just let me finish. Yeah. But I'm saying that's in our policy, because if you're behind 60 days, no matter what the cost, you're cut off. Now, here we are again. I just can't believe that we would say it's okay for people to pay or stay 2 years behind in your taxes, and as long as you pay, the next year you can build or do what you want on property. What is the message that we're sending to people when we're willing to go out and cut people's water off for $50 for the cost they're behind? What are we saying here as a board again? I don't think this is the message that we want to send. That it's okay to be behind as long as you're less than 3 years. We don't generate any revenue. You can go on and do what you please. Carry on with your life. You can build your deck. You can do whatever you wish. But some of our less fortunate folks who have found themselves in dire straits over $50 or $75, we've cut their water off, we've given them an additional bill. Come on, let's get real here. Let's get real. This is not right to say that we just let them go on. I don't care who it is. It's not fair. Level the playing field, treat everyone the same. And the ordinance is the same. If you're behind, catch up. You can do as you please based on the county ordinance. If not, then you suffer the consequences. We don't give permits if you're not going to be up to date in this county.
Are we going to continue the first reading, go to public hearing?
I think
a motion is in order.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to go to public hearing, please, on this text amendment, which is 02-2014.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we go to public hearing on the text amendment 0214, administration and enforcement requiring up-to-date payment of real estate taxes. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Division of the House, Mrs. Thomas, how do you vote? Nay. Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mr. Underwood?
Aye.
Mr. Akers?
Nay.
Mr. I can't never remember your name. Mr. Sealy?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well.
What do you name tag next time?
So we will go to public hearing for text amendment 02-2014 as presented. That takes us to agenda item number 9. First reading of proposed amendment of chapter 103, section 103-43-1 of the Code of Carolina, filing of personal property returns.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I want to try to introduce this topic and then turn it over to Mrs. Carter to answer the hard questions.
Okay.
This agenda item is a continuation of the previous discussion regarding the penalty for not notifying the Commissioner's office when you acquire new personal property, not notifying the Commissioner's office within 60 days as the ordinance requires. And this is directly related to proration, which began in the county January 1st, 2013. Under the current proration ordinance, the penalty for not filing within the 60 days is 10% of the amount of the prorated tax due. Mr. Black had received complaints from citizens who felt like they weren't aware of the penalty, the need to file, and there was some discussion about stepping up our efforts to notify those citizens. But the majority of the board ultimately decided that that wasn't necessary. The discussion at that point turned to amending the ordinance to try to place a cap on the amount of the penalty. So when we researched the possible ordinance amendment, we discovered that the current late penalty for the proration ordinance is not the same as what I would call the general personal property ordinance, which, as you know, requires citizens to file an itemized list of personal property with the Commissioner's office by February 1st each year. So the penalty for the proration ordinance is 10% of the prorated value, and the penalty for the general personal property ordinance is the sum of the greater of $10 or 10% of the assessable tax. So the two penalties do not match. And in researching it further, we consulted with the county attorney, who indicated that is a problem, that the penalty should be uniform in that same tax class. So this presents a bit of a dilemma. If we make the proration filing penalty tax match the personal property filing tax, we could not accomplish the board's goal of putting a cap on the proration penalty. On the other hand, if we change both penalties to a fixed amount, we would see our revenue from the general personal property tax February 1st deadline decline probably dramatically. I don't have the number, but you would see a significant decline, I would think, in the revenue. So the Commissioner's suggestion is that we simply eliminate the penalty on the proration ordinance, the 60-day requirement. Her office would be able to pick up the personal property through the DMV records, and those that are not picked up, such as boats and other non-licensed personal property, she could back bill those individuals from the annual billing the February, when it's picked up on the February 1st filing. That change would we bill rather, not necessarily generate, but we bill about $65,000 in penalties each year on the proration penalty. So you would lose that. Under this scenario, the penalty would remain the same for the February 1st filing for the general personal property filing, but you would eliminate the concern about the proration penalty, and the county attorney has indicated that you can't eliminate a penalty, and there would be no concern about having two separate penalties as we do now. It would resolve that issue. So you have in front of you a text or an ordinance amendment that would put in place the recommendation made by Mrs. Carter. If you feel that is a solution, it would need to be made retroactive to January 1st of this year to ensure a smooth personal property assessing season. Another alternative that you could do is to simply make the penalty for the proration ordinance the same as the general ordinance. In other words, the greater of $10 or 10%. That obviously would not put the cap in place that you talked about before, but if you notified people with a postcard, as was talked about previously, that way there should be no anybody with the legitimate ability to claim that they weren't aware of the need to do that. That concludes my introduction, Mr. Chairman, and would turn it over to Ms. Carter for any questions.
Okay. Ms. Carter, did you want to add to? No, sir. Okay. All right. Okay. Mr. Cully wants to add.
Just one thing for clarity. By eliminating this, you're not just eliminating the fee for prorated, you're eliminating the requirement to file.
Right.
So, and I know that wasn't real clear because Mr. Emerson pointed that out. So I just want to make sure you understood it. You're just eliminating that requirement for a prorated vehicle. You don't have to file. They'll pick it up in their normal manner. But you would still need to, February 1st would still be just like normal, and the penalties would be just like they currently are today.
You would not have to file within 60 days.
Right. You would not have to file on a prorated vehicle. We would pick it up, and you'd have to pay tax on it. The only thing, it would eliminate the issue with the filing penalty altogether, because you would no longer be filing.
So the person who purchased the vehicle but did not know that they had to come in and pay the taxes would not get that penalty that they now get.
They would owe their taxes, and they would owe their prorated taxes, and then by February 1st the following year, they would have to file with all their other vehicles or other personal property. But it basically just eliminates the filing requirement for prorated vehicles. And by eliminating the filing requirement, you thereby eliminate this whole penalty issue.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask to restate that to make sure I understand what we're saying? So I buy a car February 2nd. Mrs. Carter gets some information from DMV that says I registered my car. She then sends me a postcard. She doesn't do anything. She knows what my tax rate will be. And she'll send me something in June for my tax bill. Otherwise, you don't know anything about my cars unless I file it on February 1st, right?
We're still going to bill for it. We won't wait until June to send you a bill.
So how, you're going to bill me from February January to February?
Right. Actually, it'll be prorated on the book.
Right.
If you did it actually February 2nd.
So,
but you won't get a penalty. That's the issue. That was the issue.
That's the issue.
Yeah, people didn't complain about the tax. They complained about the penalty because they said they didn't know. Now we're taking away the penalty, if I'm correct.
You're correct. We would still retain the same tax structure on the vehicle that we currently have done since we adopted proration.
Right.
But the filing requirement, which is I on this ordinance that's on the table, where you must file within 60 days or you have this penalty of 10%, would go away. We're still going to tax you at base. You buy a car in July, you're going to get a prorated tax bill sometime and have to pay your taxes on owning that car for those extra months. It's just you don't have to make any filing with the commissioner. We'll get it from DMV. You'll file on it the next year, February 1st, like normal. So it really won't affect our tax revenue for proration.
But it seems like now, if I don't, because I went in there in December, but if I don't file my vehicle registrations or personal property February 1st, I get a 10% penalty.
Yes, sir.
That's
Okay.
different.
No, it's not different. Money's money. So the reality is, now we're going to put extra work in the commissioner's office to send this out. This is no extra work for you?
No, sir. We prorate all the time. We're prorating all
Because we gave
through
you
the
extra
year.
person to do that.
What
Yes.
I was suggesting was an alternative to eliminating
To eliminate the penalty.
That's all we're doing.
There'll never be another penalty.
There will be a penalty if you do not file by February 1. There will not be a penalty on the prorated items only.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? Okay.
Well, Mr. Seeley had one, and then you.
Okay.
Mrs. Carter, I buy a car April 1. You pick it up from DMV on the registration. I get a tax bill in June from April to June when you send out the next tax bills.
Yeah, that one would actually be broken in two halves. Yes, sir.
It'd be broken in, oh, because it's 2 months prior.
No.
Okay, now I know why I'm stuck.
All right, we do give the taxpayers 2 payments up to the month of August. After August, we only send out 1 bill. But of course, for the prorated item, believe me, the process is not easy.
Would I get a bill in June for a car I bought in April?
Yes, sir.
And then I would get another bill?
For December 5. We split our bills in
Right,
half.
but I would only pay 2 months in June and then 6 months in December.
Absolutely.
Okay, but, so for cars, DMV reports that rather than them paying a penalty because they wouldn't have come in to see you, they would just get a bill, and that's why I used this, because it would be right at 60 days. Actually, you have to go back to March to be more like 60 days out, because you do the bills in April.
We do the bills in April.
Or for May payment. So, okay, what about boats and RVs?
Some of those will be slow for us to pick up without the filing in the 60 days. I have to admit that.
Okay.
We're not going to pick up everything, but we will pick it up on your February 1 or when Game and Inland files another annual report with us, and it will be picked up. And it will be back billed at that time.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right, so do we want to go to public hearing?
All right, now one thing I do want you to understand, I need this to be retroactive back to January 1. Are we really going to mess with things? Okay, and then you have to know the notifications are out there now for the 60-day filing. I can't take them back. So there will be a little education that will have to be done, but I'm sure if they don't have a penalty, there's not going to be a problem.
Yeah. What we were trying to do was eliminate the
taxpayer.
penalty. That was
That's
the
it.
big issue, and
We're not eliminating the tax.
Right. We're
We're
just eliminating
eliminating
the
the prorated penalty only.
Okay. All right, so we need to go to public hearing?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, we have to do public hearing.
Yeah, go.
Anything with tax you do.
Do y'all want to adopt it as, I mean, if you're in agreement about this, you could adopt it as an emergency ordinance tonight.
Thank
So
you.
Ms. Carter could get going.
Okay.
And
Thank
then
you.
you go through the process and advertise and do the regular adoption.
We're already assessing.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to adopt as an emergency ordinance?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and properly second that we adopt this as an emergency ordinance as presented. All in favor, let it be known
Discussion.
by. Discussion.
Just for clarity,
Okay.
emergency ordinance are good for 30 days?
60 is.
60? So we have to come back and finish this ordinance within 60 days, just to make sure.
Or you're coming to work for me.
No problem.
Right, and if,
I'll show up tomorrow.
All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, that takes us to informational calendar items. Mr. Cully?
You owe us.
Remember that this is a 4-day weekend. County will be closed on Friday and Monday. So if you're looking for folks, we probably won't be there. Our next board meeting, we came out of the 212 to agree to a school board budget work session. And I think we're going to set that, if it's an agreement, at 4:30 on the 27th. It's good for the school board. They approved that last night. I'm just waiting for us to set what time. If we could do it at 5, but that just sort of gets, it's hard to get a lot done in that 1 hour. So we had recommended 4:30 on the 27th, so y'all would need to recess this meeting to 4:30 on the 27th for a meeting with the school board. VML VACO Legislative Day is Thursday the 5th. If anybody's planning on attending that, please let Pam know so she can get the registration done. Mr. Underwood has a meeting on the 20th at Visitor Center, and then there were some other meetings added I have to go back in my notes to find for other ones.
Mr. Underwood and I were discussing this meeting. I think he was going to cancel it. Or
Mr.
thinking about
Underwood,
canceling.
do you want to cancel your meeting?
You know, in light of everything that's taken place, I think I'd like to cancel that meeting. Pam, can we do that, or is it too late? We've
Maybe.
advertised, so.
If you want, I'll show up there. That is the Mattapan district.
Yeah. Then let's go on with it, if you want to show up. It won't be long.
No, I'm going to do one on the 27th.
Too late to get an
Okay,
cancellation
we'll
in the local
leave
paper.
it like it is.
Okay. The only other thing I would say, in light of the canceling of your meeting, Mr. Underwood, it seems as though there are some real concerns about this issue. And would it be, I guess, proper to send a message that maybe this is just not what we feel is best at this time? I mean, we could let them know, and they would not have to continue to keep putting effort into something that, probably is not going to happen. So I guess my question to you, Mr. Underwood, is your district. Would you like to send a message to this group that this is just not something that the board feels they can entertain at this time?
Mr. Chairman, if I just make a comment, all along through this process, my concern is that I like for processes to run their course, and that whether the six of us agree or disagree, folks have a right to come out and present and be heard, whether we disagree. And I like to be real and make sure I follow the same process, whether I agree or not. I think that's what makes us a great nation, is the fact that the voice of the people carries our vote, but people still have a right to agree and disagree. So I think we have to still allow that process and let it be said that the people's voice has been heard. And that's how I'd like to continue. That's my contention all the time, and I still think that's how it should be.
Okay.
We having closing board comments?
Well, just one other thing first. We have a solid waste amendment that supposed to be in our next meeting, is that right? Do we need to continue with that, or?
He wants a process to go.
Okay.
And I believe, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Chairman, that the applicant was supposed to contact Mr. Fincham and was going to delay that?
Okay, and I wasn't aware of that.
We've already held a public hearing on the solid waste management amendment plan. We just deferred any decision on it till after Mr. Underwood was able to have his community meetings. And so that is scheduled for the 27th, which would follow the two community meetings that you've had. So that's when we put it back on the agenda. If the board doesn't want it on the agenda, then that would certainly be something you could do. But that was our plan from when you held the public hearing and said, wait till the community meetings before we brought that back.
My opinion is I don't think it needs to be on the agenda for the 27th.
And that's my thing. I mean, if we pretty much have decided the direction that we're going, then I don't see any point in bringing the solid waste amendment back on the 27th. So,
But the applicant was saying.
I can say to Mr. Underwood right now, really and truly, I know that some people don't believe it, but I really haven't gone into a public hearing with my mind solidly made up in the 28 years I've been on this board. But I'm going into this public hearing with my mind made up. It is not an issue that I'm going to support, to be quite honest with you. And it's just.
And that's my reason for saying, for making the statement that I made.
With the process.
Right. But, if we know now, if the majority of this board has decided that that is not the direction that we want to go, then I don't know that we need this on the agenda.
Well,
we could vote that down tonight.
Yes, excuse me, sir. I mean, as far as process goes, the next step in the legal process would be to take a vote on the solid waste amendment ordinance, or the ordinance The
Okay,
amendment
now
to
it's
the
not
ordinance.
on- it's not on the
But when
agenda,
when
though.
you do it is up to you, but you need to have the vote
I'm saying go ahead and
sometime.
vote over it.
But there's
But
no
it's-
further public hearing
Get it
or
over
public discussion
Can we
necessary
do
legally.
that with it not being on the agenda?
Well, the way your procedures normally work, you would want to amend the agenda to put it on it, but you could do that. I mean, you could, that's a decision for the majority of the board to make.
So what I hear you saying, Mr. Emerson, is that we can call for a vote on the solid waste, whether we want it on the agenda at this point.
I think you could do that if you wanted to do that. Yes.
That's what the majority of the board is saying, that we want to have a vote on that now without being out of order. So can we procedurally do what?
Yes, sir, I would just make I would have someone make a motion first to amend the agenda to put that question on it and then call that question.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, I will at this time entertain a motion to amend the agenda to put the solid waste amendment discussion on the agenda so that we can vote it up or vote it down, whichever way we choose. For right now. We can't do it without it being on the agenda, and so we need to amend the agenda to put it on there.
I'm lost.
We need to amend the agenda right now to put.
Are we voting on, we're not voting at all on the actual text amendments, we're just voting whether it's going to be on the agenda?
We're going to right now, if the board so chooses, we're going to amend the agenda to put the solid waste amendment, to talk about the solid waste amendment, to, our
Right now.
purpose is to vote it down if this is what the majority
Okay.
wants.
I got you.
But we can't do that because it's not on the agenda. So,
And the only thing I'd add to that, we're not talking zoning text amendment, we're talking the solid waste management plan, which you held a public hearing on in December, on December 2nd. And that action was deferred until Mr. Underwood was able to have some community meetings. As far as zoning text amendments, that hadn't moved to the board yet, so that's not something that you could take action on yet.
But the solid waste management plan is what allows those zoning text amendments to move forward.
Right, so that is correct.
So we have an open action item of either accepting or denying the solid waste management plan.
That is correct.
That's what you'd like to have on the agenda right at this instant. Is that my understanding, Mr. Chairman?
yes, sir.
And then if we vote on that, following that amendment, the solid waste management plan would be defeated. And
And then
even
we
if the
would-
text amendments, well, the text amendments could eventually come to the board and they would have no relevance.
That's correct.
Right. So I need a motion to amend the agenda so that the solid waste management plan can be discussed.
So moved.
Second. Moved and properly second that we amend the agenda and add the solid waste management plan. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now we can make a motion to deal with the solid waste management plan, vote it down or vote it up, or take it off the agenda, I guess is what we need to do.
No, we just put it on the agenda.
I mean, for the 27th.
Mr. Chairman.
No.
It's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda right now.
For the, right, but what we are doing is deciding to not talk.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry.
I would make a motion to deny or not carry through with the text amendment on the solid waste plan. That was
Solid waste management plan.
solid waste management plan as presented by staff.
No, it
Just
is.
not approve. If
You
I
would vote to
understand
not
you
approve the
correctly,
solid waste management plan as
Excuse
presented.
me.
Mr. Emerson, you've done a good job of explaining my motion.
If I understand correctly what you're asking, the way I would phrase it is that you're making a motion to not approve the proposed solid waste management plan amendment.
Mr. Chairman, that's exactly what my motion says.
Okay,
I'm
is
going to
there a
second his motion.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second that we deny the solid waste management plan as presented. the solid waste plan amendment. Are there questions, discussion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Okay, that takes us to closing board comments. Mr. Thomas, do you have closing
comment.
words? Mr. Black?
No comment, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Underwood?
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Akers?
No comments.
And Mr. Seal?
I have no comments.
And I have none as well. Okay, we need to recess.
I make a motion recess to 4:30 on the 27th of January, here at the Community Services Building, EOC room.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and properly seconded, we recess to the 27th at 4:30. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.